Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Whadjuk people. We would like to pay respect to the elders of the Noongar Nation, past and present, who have walked and cared for the land, and we acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contributions made to the life of this city and this region. And I now invite you to bow your head in prayer. Lord, we ask for your blessing upon our city, our community and our council. Guide us in our decision-making to act fairly, without fear or favour, and with compassion, integrity and honesty. May we show true leadership, be inclusive of all, and guide the city of Wanneroo to a prosperous future that all may share. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. Mrs. Smart, could you please read the announcements?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. In regards to tonight's meeting, please note that the audio proceedings will be live broadcast online, with the exception of matters discussed behind closed doors. That broadcast will remain available via the City of Wanneroo website following the conclusion of this meeting. In regards to the COVID-19 pandemic situation, the City of Wanneroo is committed to ensuring the safety of all attendees at this meeting. In accordance with the West Australian State Government health directives, social distancing has been applied to this meeting room and the capacity of the chamber is limited under these conditions. In addition, masks are required to be worn at all public indoor settings, and therefore all attendees at this meeting are required to please wear a mask at all times within this building, even whilst talking, unless a medical exemption has been provided to the security officers on guard. Excuse me. Thank you for your understanding of these conditions. In regard to the public question and statement time, Madam Mayor, the following general rules apply. Public questions and statements should only relate to the business of the local government. They should not be a personal statement or opinion. Only questions relating to matters affecting the local government will be considered at a council meeting. Questions may be taken on notice and responded to after the meeting. Questions may not be directed at specific council members or a city employee. Questions are not to reflect adversely on any particular council member or city employee. First priority is given to persons who are asking questions relating to items on the meeting. Second priority is given to public statements and public statements regarding items on the council agenda. Each person seeking to ask questions or make a statement during public question and statement time may address the council for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Smart. Attendances, item 1 per the record, thank you. Item 2, apologies and leave of absence, and we have no apologies. Item 3, public question time. So I have received a list of questions that are in writing, and I believe that the author does not wish to ask the questions personally, and they're from Leah Beedham, from Hocking, and I will direct those questions through to the administration for written response, which will then appear in the minutes of the next of this meeting. Thank you. We also have another set of questions and then 2 statements. So our next question is from Mr. Hugh Newen. And Mr. Newen, if you could please kindly take your place at the podium and clearly state your name and address for our records. Thank you, and welcome back to Council Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last September, before finishing up my term as councillor, I lodged a formal complaint after witnessing a motor vehicle belonging to an elected member parking illegally in a disabled bay in the city's basement car park without displaying a disabled parking permit, thereby depriving those with a genuine disability their right to park in a designated bay. The illegal parking occurred regularly on numerous occasions between March and September 2021. To date, the city has refused to take any enforcement action against the perpetrator. I have 3 questions to the city. 1, why is the city appear to be protecting this particular elected member by not taking any appropriate enforcement action? 2, when is the city going to take appropriate enforcement action in this matter to ensure that there is no perception within the community that there is one rule for elected members and another rule for ratepayers? 3, does the city agree that such action in protecting an elected member in this way could well amount to misconduct or corruption under the Corruption and Crime Commission Act 2003 WA?
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take those on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have 2 statements, and I invite Mrs. Newton to the podium. If you clearly state your name and address for our records. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors and visitors. My statement is more or less a compliment to the council. It's not to do with what's on an agenda, but it's been on previous agendas. Recently, my husband and I went down on holiday to Denmark, and we were evacuated due to the bushfires and moved to the evacuation centre in Albany. Can I tell those here present tonight, they have absolutely no idea how to run an evacuation centre, but this city does. What this city does is so good compared to there. We were not offered water. There was nowhere for animals to go. I actually slept in the car with my dog. My husband was in hospital because he'd had an accident in the car park there due to true roots coming up through the ground, and spent days in hospital and has cracked ribs to bring back from the holiday. But I wanted people to realise that although there's supposed to be this guideline on evacuation centres, there were a lot of people there that had caravans and tents, and they were able to look after their animals, whereas people like myself who rocked up in a car, there was nowhere to leave him. They didn't offer any water supplies for them or any food or anything. So our evacuation centres are brilliant, and I'd like to congratulate our staff and the Department of Communities for the way that they're run in this area. That was my statement. May I now ask my questions?
Yes.
Thank you. The first question is, I've provided a photo list for elected members so they'll understand what it is I'm talking about. It has some photos on it. In Church Street, there is a scarred tree, an Aboriginal scarred tree. It has absolutely no protection at the moment. There is a development site taking place behind it. There was a pile of earth dumped there the other day. Today, when I drove past, there was a huge truck and a ute parked within metres of the base of that tree. As you'll see from the photo, the sign that tells you about the tree has danger buried, and the word you can't see is gas. And next to it, I feel that we need to be doing something for this tree. So my question to council is, can we look at this tree and provide it with maybe a wrought iron fence or something to protect it? Because not only are the development occurring, but we also have plenty of hooning on that corner. So that is my first question. I realise nobody can answer it tonight, so unless you're going to direct otherwise, Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Newton. Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're certainly happy to investigate that one and see if that's feasible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Newton?
My second question is, on the warrant of payments, 836, the Department of Planning has been paid $41,495, and I will say this is me. I would like to understand the reason why Council paid a development application fee to the state.
Mr. Dixon?
Where in the warrant of payments will the cost of investigations into complaints lodged about elected members be found? And will next year's annual report list the cost of trips, training, attendance at conferences be against the elected members alongside the breakdown of expenses that are claimed? It would appear that this year's report listed a budgeted amount of $2,000 per elected member, which was exceeded by some and not claimed by others. They are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Newton. So there's a question for the Director of Planning. Mr Dixon, would you like to respond to that question now?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and I'll take that one on notice and provide a detailed response to Mrs Newton.
Thank you. Mrs Jennings?
Thank you, Mayor. The question about complaints costs will come up as we pay those bills. So there's probably not any in this particular warrant, but they will come up depending on which complaint administrator we use.
Thank you. And for those in the gallery, for advice, the response to the questions that have been asked by Mrs Newton will also appear in the minutes of the next meeting, of this meeting, so the next agenda. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs Newton. And we have another statement, Mr Howard. Mr Howard, if you could kindly make your way to the podium and clearly state your name and address for our records. Thank you.
Drive in Dari. Speaking to the item AS 02322, tender number 21091, construction of Splendid Park cycling path upgrade. For the benefit of people in the gallery, Northern Beaches Cycling Club is a club that incorporated in 2010, and we've been working with the City of Wanneroo ever since then for the establishment of a cycling facility. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge the passing of former Councillor Lewis Flood. Lewis was ever supportive, enthusiastic of all things cycling. In particular, he helped influence the design of Splendid Park in the form of ensuring that there was ready and easy access for people with disabilities. He was really big on that point, and that's been incorporated into the designs. People can rock up from an Acrod car park, roll straight up to a registration and roll straight onto the course. There's no impediment to accessing this. I'm here this evening with our members of our club, Northern Beaches Cycling Club, representatives of West Coast Masters Cycling Council and AusCycle. We want to thank the City of Wanneroo administration for all their work in progressing the Splendid Park cycling upgrade to this point. We thank you for recommending a tender to be approved and construction to commence so promptly. If the cycling upgrade gets the go-ahead this evening, you will be providing a facility where kids can learn to ride a bike and learn competencies so that their parents will let them ride safely to school, on or off the road. Schools will have a place to provide cycling for sport and outdoor education, and the resident sporting clubs such as Little Athletics, football and cricket will have a fitness training track. Our club will proudly host community and sporting events that encourage physical activity. We will offer training sessions for youth and adults during the week and racing on weekends. If you vote in favour tonight, we'll immediately promote our youth squad training to commence on the 28th of April. In this interim, this will be held at the Quinns Rock Sports Club. In this way, we'll hit the ground running by the time the facility opens in October of this year. To improve accessibility, we will offer an any bike format so that kids can participate, train or even race with the bike that they have. And we'll look to provide disadvantaged kids with a bike in order to participate, so it's truly a community facility. I want to personally thank the Mayor and Councillors who have listened and been part of this long journey. We hope you vote in favour of the administration's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Howard, and also thank you for acknowledging Lewis Flood. Very much appreciated. And also thank you for your enthusiasm and your absolute dedication to this project. Thank you. We have another question, Mr P Henderson. Is Mr Henderson here? If you could kindly make your way to the podium and clearly state your name and address for our records. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillors. My name is Peter Henderson and I have lived on 250 Carrabuda Road in Carrabuda for many years. My questions for the council tonight is, are you aware that my family has been living in 250 Carrabuda Road since 1984? And is council aware that businesses is operated by my two sons who live on the property, were born on the property, will continue to live on the property? And is council aware that our family business services primary business within the Carrabuda area and has been supported by a petition of 166 signatures and the 7 letters of support provided to the council? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr Henderson. Thank you for those questions, and I can respond on behalf of council to say absolutely yes. And I do recall the resolution at the last council meeting, which has then brought this item back to council. But thank you very much for the question and also for the services that your family does provide to our local community.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more question, which we have received in writing, and I don't believe Ms Ruston would like to ask the question from the microphone. So the council's administration will be responding to the question in writing, and once again, the response will be noted in the minutes of the meeting. Thank you. There are no other questions on the agenda. Are there any questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Thank you. That concludes public question and statement time. Moving on to item 4, confirmations of minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 15th of February. Can I please have a move and seconder? Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Seconded, Councillor Civic. Thank you. And I'll actually take the next minutes of the special council meeting held on the 9th of March 2022. Moved Councillor Rowe, seconded Councillor Civic. So,
excuse me, Madam Mayor?
yes, Councillor Baker, do you have a question? On
yes,
one of
Madam
the...
Mayor, regarding the minutes of the special council meeting held on
Right,
9
okay, so I will park that. So if I could please, we've had the mover and second, if I could please ask you to cast your vote for OC 01-322. I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. So moving on to special council meeting held on the 9th of March. So we have moved Councillor Rowe, seconded Councillor Civic and Councillor Baker.
Yes, a question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is addressed to the CEO. The minutes, of course, are not incorporated in tonight's agenda. I think they were incorporated in the related briefing session agenda. I noted that with both items that were dealt with at the special council meeting on 9 March 2022, the typed minutes noted the voting numbers, so to speak, but it also noted that there was an abstention in respect of each such agenda item when it came on for a vote. I just want to go over particulars. Who was the abstaining or alleged abstaining elected member, please?
Mr. CEO.
Madam Mayor, I'll need to take that on notice.
Thank you. So, councillors, we've got a mover and seconder for the special council meeting. The CEO will respond to the question. So I'm going to put the minutes. If you could please cast your vote. Thank you. I declare that carried. Moving on to item 5, announcements by the Mayor without discussion. I do have an announcement, and firstly I would like to read a message, and before I do that I'm going to preamble that with immediately after the last council meeting we heard of the sad passing of one of our recently retired councillors, Lewis Flood, and I thank Mr. Howard for his kind words earlier this evening in recognition of Mr. Flood, and he worked incredibly hard on behalf of this council, of the community, and was a much-loved councillor within our community. But I have got a note here from his wife, and she asked if I would read this out at the council meeting. She writes, "My family and I would like to thank those of you who attended Lewis's funeral and sent condolences. To Lewis, it was never about politics. It was about being a spokesman for a community he truly cared about. And again, thank you to those who supported him." And that was from his wife, Evie Flood. And you can imagine the suddenness of Lewis's passing and how difficult it is for his family to come to terms with their loss. And it is incredibly sad. I would also like to, and it sounds awful going from such a sad message to a celebration, and I'm trying to, you can probably tell with my voice, I'm trying to adjust to this announcement, but it is a celebration. The City of Wanneroo was acknowledged at the Institute of Public Works Australia WA Division's Excellence Awards at the 2022 Annual State Conference Dinner on Friday, 11th of March 2022. Whilst being selected as a finalist was a significant achievement, seeing the calibre of projects from local government and the private sector, it is with great pride I advise that 2 of the city's recently completed projects received awards. Hinkley Park was a finalist under 2 categories, Best Public Works Project under $2 million and Excellence in Environment and Sustainability. This project received the highly commended award under Best Public Works Project under $2 million category. After extensive community consultation, Hinkley Park in Hocking was designed and project managed by the city's own team. Since its opening in June 2021, Hinkley Park has been a huge success with the community, and even though developed as a neighbourhood park, has quickly become a destination park, attracting visitors from outside the city of Wanneroo. The next project, the Marmion Avenue duplication from Butler to Yanchep, was a winner under Best Public Works greater than $5 million metro category. This project included duplication of 11.5 kilometre stretch of Marmion Avenue and is one of the largest in both size and cost infrastructure projects that the city has undertaken. The Marmion Avenue duplication project is an exemplary collaboration success story between state, local government, utility providers and developers, delivering an innovative, high-quality, cost-effective solution worthy of industry recognition for an exceptional outcome for the local community. The completed project resulted in the construction of a $29.4 million worth of infrastructure with no cost to the city's ratepayers. The key to the successful implementation of the works was regular and open lines of communication. Land developers complimented the city for having the foresight to include them in the project development phase and offering them the option to bring works forward, helping to reduce the need for redundant works and further construction and traffic disturbances into the future. I would like to invite Mr. Singh to come forward and say a sincere thank you to Mr. Singh and his team who were enthusiastic and dedicated, and it was great to receive these awards. So that concludes announcements by the Mayor without discussion. Thank you. Item 6, are there any questions from council members? Okay, Councillor Nguyen.
I've just got 2 questions in relation to the publication of the briefings and in relation to the agenda items. So when does the city publish its agenda for the briefing and ordinary council meeting? I've received concerns from residents that it's not published given they've not been given sufficient time to consider the agenda items and make a contribution, and can these agenda items be made available around the same time as council members?
Thank you. Mrs. Smart?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. In regards to the publication of all briefing agendas and council agendas, all of those items are published and available to council members and the public at the same time, which is the Friday prior to the meeting.
Thank you, Mrs Smart. Councillor Nguyen, you had a further question?
She's answered both of them at the same
Okay.
time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Nguyen. There be no further questions from elected members? No, thank you. We will move on to item 7, petitions. We have no petitions. Item 8, reports. Moving on to planning and sustainability. So elected members, if you do have any declarations of interest when you get to the report, if you could please advise of that. So moving on to PS01. Do I have a mover and seconder for PS01? Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillor Rowe, you wish to speak to this item?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I am moving this motion tonight and I'm asking you to support the recommendation as well. If I can, I just wanted to offer a brief history to begin with, just to set the scene on why this improvement plan is necessary and why I believe it's significant for our community, particularly our southern residents. Girraween and Kundoola were earmarked for public housing in the late 1960s. The first community centre was built in Girraween in 1972, the first high school in 1974, the first library in 1977, Kundoola Plaza in 1978, and Summerfield shops in the neighbouring suburb of Girraween in 1979. Fast forward 40 years. Recognising the potential of the South Ward, the city drafted a local area plan for Kundoola and Girraween in 2019. Since that time, we have seen improvements. Residential recoding has led to newer affordable housing and some smaller estates. The city has invested in local parks and community facilities, and that has been well received by residents. I firmly believe that residents and the city have done their part, so it is frustrating to see private owners either not realising or not believing in the potential of this great area. The report is pretty clear to me, Madam Mayor. Council has worked through negotiation options and now needs to escalate this issue to the Minister. From my questions last week, it seems the improvement plan is not a Hail Mary, but it's also not a slam dunk. For it to be properly considered, we need to demonstrate the strategic significance of the land and the years of sustained effort that have gone into inspiring, encouraging and advocating for private investment. I'm conscious that compulsory acquisition as a last resort carries risks, namely to reputation, finances and legal action. These will largely be inherited by the state under the improvement plan, which may impact the likelihood of approving such a plan. However, I'm also wary of the reputational risks associated with throwing in the towel and giving up on these residents. Some people have lived in Kundoola for 45 years. They are fiercely loyal, they're active in the community, and many have raised children and grandchildren in the suburb. I've always believed that growth in the north of the city and development in the east should be balanced with maintenance of the established areas of the south. Lobbying for an improvement plan demonstrates our ongoing commitment to residents in these established suburbs. It sends a clear message that they are just as important, just as valuable, and just as deserving of a community that services their needs and expectations. Madam Mayor, I hope the city can persist with its negotiations with the landowners while this matter is considered. Clarifying the city's intentions for Lot 250 and developing the land accordingly is an act of good faith and will demonstrate to residents and the landowners that we as a council are committed to delivering on our local area plan. I ask my fellow councillors to please join me tonight in support of this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Treby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I absolutely wholeheartedly support the comments from Councillor Rowe, providing a very good balanced view of the history of the area and the shopping centre in question. As some around the table and some in the gallery will know, the city has been trying, by my count, for 21 years to engage with the Kundoola Shopping Centre strata owners to assist them in any and every way we can.
and it only comes to this point when those efforts no longer bear fruit or any fruit at all. It is the number one and the only subject that ever comes up in Kandoola when you're talking to any of the residents, who are fiercely loyal to their area. They like where they live. They've built family around that. And I've often said to people, if you're looking at investing anywhere within Perth, you should look at what Kandoola has the potential to offer. Because if you're in the same location in terms of distance from the CBD in Sydney, you're sitting on $1 million plus property. That's where Kandoola is headed. Council knows this. We've invested heavily in Kandoola. There's been a lot of redevelopment, a new community centre, road upgrades, new parks, upgraded facilities. And it is time for this investment body, the shopping centre strata owners, to finally put their plans forward and join the program. The city is, in this process, investing its land on behalf of the community to make sure that we've got something that will see the Kandoola community and serve them through for the next 50 years at the very least. Councillors, this is and congratulations must go to Mr Dixon and the team in the Planning Directorate for the approach and the work and the collaboration with the Department of Planning Commission to engage and take us on this path. And I think it is the best and greatest hope we have of finally addressing the major and only concern that most of the residents in Kandoola have, and that's with the condition of the shopping centre.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Speakers for? Speakers against? Yes, Councillor Parker. Speaker for?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I strongly support this recommendation, and thank you, Councillor Rowe and Treby, for your history of the area. Frankly, the fact that the owners of this centre have no regard to the obvious safety issues and shocking state of disrepair of the centre is unacceptable. Residents who reside in this area deserve more, and I am happy to assist in every way I can. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Civic.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess all the major points have been made, but in support of this motion going forward and the West Australian Planning Commission being the deciding government agency that will decide the future of this, the point I just wanted to make one point, and that is that the actual strata owners in that complex, the Strata Title Act has changed, and the centre being very, very old will reach that point where it's going to need a lot of surgery. And if the strata owners do decide, it could be quite an expensive exercise. But having said that, I think that where we are today is really paramount into creating a good shopping precinct within that area in the hopefully the not too distant future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Speakers against? Speakers for? Putting the recommendation, if you could please cast your vote. Thank you. Declare that carried unanimously. Moving on to PSO2. So, councillors, we have the recommendation as printed on the notice paper. We also have an alternative recommendation. So if we do not have a mover or seconder for PSO2, we'll automatically go to the proposed alternative, which you all have a copy of. So I'm going to ask, is there any mover for PSO2? No mover. Thank you. PSO2 lapses, and we have got a alternative recommendation, which is move Councillor Miles. I know, Councillor Treby, that you indicated this last week, but Councillor Baker, you are seconding. Thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Miles.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and to Council. I do ask you to support this alternate recommendation. It's in line with the alternate that I did some 18 months or so ago when this first came to our attention through a public complaint. The additional use is obviously to allow the family to continue doing motor repairs, vehicle repairs on that site, right at the very front part of that site. And I think listening to Mr Henderson earlier tonight, where he indicated the family's been living there for 38 years. Also, I'm very much aware that all of the community in and around this particular lot appreciate and absolutely like the fact that this business operation is working there. It means that they can get their equipment serviced locally without having to use tilt tray trucks and the like to transport tractors and other pieces of equipment down to other locations within the city at additional cost. The alternate recommendation is as was advertised, and we have put a couple of small conditions on there that obviously that they apply to a portion of the land at the front part of the land, that one of the owners will have to live on the property, which they already do now, and mum and dad lives there as well. And the motor repair business will be limited to serving machinery and agriculture and all that goes into that area's use, including the sand quarry machinery and the like. It isn't a difficult decision for me to put the amendment up because of the 166 residents that live nearby. All of them were in support of it. I got an enormous amount of phone calls when it first started through no fault of themselves, and they're now making this for a permanent use, and I ask Council to support that so the family can get this sorted out with the state government through the Commission and have this use approved for their site going forward. Thank you, Councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very, very brief. The issues in respect to this agenda item were fully addressed and canvassed when this issue or application was last before the City almost 2 years ago. The substituted notice of motion moved by Councillor Miles has overwhelming merit, and I would endorse all councillors to endorse the same, hopefully on a unanimous basis. There has been no material or significant change in the circumstances in respect of amendment number 188 of DPS 2 for the additional use of motor vehicle repairs at lot 23, Carabutta Road, Carabutta. In short, once again, the matter has considerable merit, and I wish the applicant proponents every success with their formalised business venture. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. And from the Chair, I'm going to speak in favour of the alternative recommendation and commend Councillor Miles for putting this forward. Mr Henderson, in the deputation, it was a short but very effective deputation, and we could hear it. Your enthusiasm for this local business, this family business, and 38 years in the area. And without a doubt, this is a good alternative recommendation moving forward. I recall the last time you were in, apart from last week, we were in the council chambers, and the cheer squad that came in from the local neighbourhood, and that speaks volumes. And I know it's a very effective business, and you should be incredibly proud, and as I am proud as the Mayor, to support this alternative recommendation. It is the right thing to do. Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I applaud Councillor Miles and Councillor Baker for this amendment and will be supporting this for the following reasons. Point 1, administration raised a point last week during the deputation that accepting this would be a precedent for others to follow. Ms Sandry raised during the deputation that each proposal must be accepted on its merits and that each case will be different and have its own context. Point 2, the submissions received had provided information related to the relationship with the community and the benefits it currently provides Carabutta businesses. Judging from the attendance at last week and this week's session in relation to this item was significant, and part of my role is to take on board the community feedback and recognise that this family business is providing convenience and a service which is in a lack of in this area. My last point is this business will provide local employment opportunities and support the strategic community plan and economic strategies, whilst having no impact on the amenity or surrounding landowners, or causing any disturbance being in a rural resource zone. The site has no water licence and cannot obtain one, so in my view, it would not be wise to take this opportunity off this local family who is following the Wanneroo values and giving it a go since 1984. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Aitken.
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at this amendment, I'm really happy to support it. You know, we have our policies, our procedures and everything like that, but sometimes one size doesn't fit all. And common sense has to prevail when people are living within areas. Common sense has prevailed with Councillor Miles's alternative, and I'm really happy to support this recommendation. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Coetzee.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the family for giving such a big help to the farming community there in Carabooda. I think we all know if farming equipment or anything breaks, to come and fix it, to get a mechanic out to come and fix it, or to move that machinery to a workshop, it's very expensive. It's a difficult situation. So thank you to this family as well. Thank you to Councillor Miles for putting this amendment forward. I think we need this done. Please support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coetzee. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Parker.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I do understand administration's reasons for not supporting the amendment, as I am a huge supporter of the Neerabip industrial area and the importance, and well aware of the importance of the area's economic viability well into the future. I know that the Carabooda site, while not being used for agriculture purpose now, could be in the future. That considered, under the terms of this amendment being one owner must reside on the premises, and when or if the property is sold, the additional use will fall away, I will support Councillor Miles's amendment on the basis that the existing business has and will continue to support the local agricultural, horticultural and extractive industries in its direct areas, and it is well supported by its neighbours, which is hugely important. Thank you to all the residents for all the time that you've spent here. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm for this alternate recommendation. It's of great importance that we try and keep what little rural areas we're going to have. However, Carabooda is very agricultural, and at the end of the day, trying to move those vehicles that break down in those areas to Neerabip, which will probably be the nearest service area that these vehicles will have to go to, is an enormous task for these people. So this service is ideal. It's in a small part of the land block that these people own. They are restricted in the fact that they can't on-sell their business. They have to live there. And they are in enormous support by their fellow community. So it would be, for myself and just taking a personal point of view, very distressing for the local community if this council refused this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Savitton.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. When this did come up some time ago, I was very happy to second the alternative recommendation at that time. But knowing many of the people that live up in Carabooda, etc., and knowing the distances that they have to travel to actually take their vehicles for servicing, I think this is a no-brainer in terms of the motion or the alternative recommendation by Councillor Miles. I think the service that they will provide will certainly take the pressure off the community up there and provide a good service. And the other key thing which has been brought up before, but I'd like to highlight is the fact of the water licences. Here is a property that doesn't have one and really can't do much with it other than for the owners to live there. So it is very important that we look at some of these properties which don't have water licences in the future for other alternative uses, or that we change our town planning scheme in time to make things a little easier to carry on businesses in the future. But other than that, I certainly support the recommendation and wish the family very well in their business venture. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savitten. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Treby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I certainly support the alternate recommendation, so much so that I foreshadowed it last week. But in a conversation with the Director of Planning, he did say that he'd spoke with Councillor Miles early that day, so I was more than happy to withdraw my foreshadowed support. It's what I would have supported. I do value the advice we get from administration. They are absolutely doing the job that they are paid to do, and that's to provide frank and fearless advice and to certainly present council with considered reports. Balancing that up, however, it comes down for me, and this is what council is all about. It's about balancing up the facts, the evidence, and ultimately the public interest. And I think in this circumstance, the public interest would not be served if the recommendation from administration was followed in this circumstance. The public interest both in the demand side for these services from the local farms and on the supply side with this family well located to provide and continue to provide those services as they have been for some time. I'm more than happy to support the alternate recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Rowe.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'm conscious that I wasn't around the table when this was last presented, but first, congratulations to Councillor Miles and Councillor Baker for putting forth this alternative, and also to the Hendersons for being here tonight, and also for representing your family and your business last week at the briefing session. To have such a level of support, both from your business but also from your neighbouring community, is a very impressive thing. We don't always see that. It's not taken as a given around the table, so it means that the partnership you have with the community is very strong indeed. And I'm hopeful that the outcome tonight is a display of council listening to and acting on the overwhelming feedback of its community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Miles, I don't believe you need the right of reply, so I'm going to put the alternative recommendation. If I could please ask you to cast your vote. I declare that carried unanimously. That's the alternative recommendation. Thank you. Well done. I might just pause for if you wish to leave the council chamber. You're quite welcome to stay for the night, but really appreciate you. All right, thank you. And Councillor Rowe's right, that support from the local community speaks volumes. Moving on to PS03, can I please have a mover and seconder? PS03. Okay, thank you, Councillor Parker, and seconded Councillor Herridge. Councillor Parker, you wish to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick statement and then a quick question at the end. I'm obviously for this in principle and will vote in favour. I also want to acknowledge for my fellow Lansdale residents at home that it's not been forgotten that this block is actually one of a few that were at council not long ago for a planning proposal to increase the density of the lots. It's actually a proposal which is most likely why I'm sitting here today. In meeting with our planning department after hearing the result of the childcare proposal for which this POR is on item, it's noted administration in improving under the delegation. It ensured adequate parking would be provisioned for inside the block's boundary and to approve this change of use for the childcare centre. I just wanted to ask and make sure that we reassure residents that in approving the POR removal for the block's access via Warradale Terrace, that it will be monitored for disruption to nearby residents and traffic during the renovation period. It's obvious that this access to the block is much easier from the front than it's legal on the back, which is Grayswood Court. And I see myself that this could actually become an issue in time. Warradale Terrace sweeps in its design. It's high traffic. It's a main access way into Lansdale for shopping and the very close by local school. I've already noted myself that access has been used via those existing driveways already, just to start clearing out some of what's in there. They're also using the layover bus bay as well, that's on the verge on the opposite side to the park. And the park itself on the verge could also sustain damage from extra use. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. Speakers for? Speakers against? Putting the recommendation, all those in favour, if you could please cast your vote. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to AS01.
Excuse me, Mayor, can I just ask a question?
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Miles.
The screen behind you has changed. We can no longer see the for and against. We used to have two bars on this side of the screen, and it's no longer there. So I'm not sure whether admin have changed something. But
I'll direct that question to Mrs. Smart. Mrs. Smart.
Yes, thank you for the question. We will have a look into that. If it can't be fixed during this meeting, we'll ensure it's ready for the next meeting. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Miles?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. It's just that when they put the little bar next to our picture, I don't see that because I'm green colourblind. So
Okay.
I don't always see the difference.
All right, okay, we'll take that on board. Thank you. Moving on to assets, AS01. Councillors, I'm happy to move this. Seconded, Councillor Treby. Councillors, I'll take the report as read. It's straightforward. I particularly like recommendation 6 about prioritising the outstanding detailed design works. This is a road that's causing significant angst for members of our community. And I note that we'll be writing to the Minister for Transport and the City of Joondalup and Main Roads to advocate for the required funding and resource commitment to deliver the intersection upgrade as soon as possible. So I'm happy to absolutely move this. And Councillor Treby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just a very brief point. I think there are a number of people in that little small pocket of Madley who will be jumping for joy with this particular project. It's been a long time coming. I congratulate Mr. Singh and his team for the report and the strategies that have been put in place to progress the project. And I recommend councillors support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Speakers for? Councillor Civic.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm absolutely in support of this item. I would like to make the point, though, that I would be more encouraged if council or administration actually worked towards the west of Hartman to Wanneroo Road as quickly as possible, because there are major traffic problems in that area, and also rat running through the estate where I live. And I say I'm far enough away not to have to declare any interest in this, but the fact is that it is a long time coming. I like to certainly compliment Mr. Singh for this particular report. It is very paramount. The traffic a real diabolical, and hopefully negotiations will, with the Main Roads Department, can complete the intersection at Hepburn Avenue, not Hepburn, sorry, I've forgotten the name of the road now, Whitfords Avenue, sorry, and Wanneroo Road. That is very, very important as we've just completed the roadworks at Ocean Reef Road, and traffic now is bottling there. So I'm certainly in favour of it, and thank you, Mr Singh.
Thank you, Councillor Surbiton. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Aitken.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to support the realignment of Nangara Road to Wanneroo Road there, which will unite the north and south Madeley. Kids going to school will be able to walk to school from the northern part of Madeley without trying to run the risk of crossing Nangara Road. Lena Nursery was up and running when I first moved to the city of Wanneroo, and it has been empty for years waiting for this realignment. The realignment has been miles too long coming, and I'm looking forward to it coming in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Rowe.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick point to echo the sentiments of councillors so far. Also, to say that it will be a good thing when Northern Madeley is joined in with the remainder, given the pressures on congestion, road safety that are occurring at the moment. I am hopeful that in the city's advocacy efforts that we do lobby for the maximum amount required to be able to ensure this project goes ahead, because I am conscious of the fact that residents who, while we're not responsible for the vision that they bought into when they settled in Northern Madeley, we do have to make sure that they do not wait an excessive longer period of time than they already have to ensure that this goes ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, I too am hugely supportive of us moving ahead with the design and in part do some construction. This was an area that I know for sure where it was designed for an upgrade. It was done in the previous government. Money was put in the budget. It was taken out after the 17 election for a roundabout to be installed at Whitfords Avenue and Wanneroo Road. The idea of that was to eliminate the traffic lights at Whitfords Avenue and Nangara Road while doing the realignment. It couldn't be done by the city on its own because obviously Main Roads is actually a state road and does need them to fund the lion's share of that. And it was quite I think it was $3 to $6 million was the ballpark back then because of the cost to acquire the land of Lena Nurseries, which obviously was a business at the time. So I'm very supportive of administration doing all it can to push this project ahead as far as it can, and then for the administration through advocacy as suggested to get that funding in place to have that connection done, so it alleviates some of the stress on Ocean Reef Road and some of the other roads that are becoming rat runs through our Wangara industrial area. So some of the trucks can then head straight off onto the freeway via Whitfords Avenue. So hugely in support of it. Can't wait to see how Mr Singh does the design work.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Speakers against? Speakers for? Putting the recommendation, if you could please cast your vote. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to infrastructure capital works. Councillors, I'm happy to move AS02, seconded Councillor Kutsia. And in doing so, I just effectively reiterate how Mr Howard articulated in his deputation and the importance of this cycle path and the reason why it needs to be done. Splendid Park is certainly a significant asset in our Yanchep area and is well utilised. And as Mr Howard said, it's going to provide additional benefits for so many local community members and also the sporting clubs, and it will also attract people from afar to this area. And we all know just how beautiful a part of the world that Yanchep is, and it's great to have people visit that don't live there and and then be able to go away and tell many other people, which is good for our tourism perspective. But from the actual cycle path and the importance of knowing how to cycle sensibly, how to ride a bike in a safe setting, but also have an opportunity for this to be used as a competitive in a competitive environment. And Dr. Chris Howard has been an amazing advocate. His enthusiasm and his dedication has been unparalleled. Members of the gallery, we've actually seen this whole council chambers full of people from the cycling world, knowing how important this is to our local area and also for people to visit. So I do commend the recommendation to you, and also thank Dr. Howard for his work with this project. Councillor Coetzee. Thank you.
First, I would like to say thank you to everybody who was involved in this. I think you all know who you are. I'm not going to mention names or anything. All I can say is it came a long way. Sorry that I'm sitting with my back to you. How long was it, Chris? Quite a while. Almost 8-9 years that I know of it, that I'm in communities with you and everything, so it's happening. It's happening. I can't wait for this. So thank you very much for everybody. The design, the grants, the design, the area that we got for this criterium track. I'm super excited. My words left me, so I'm just saying thank you, and please, councillors, support us in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coetzee, and also the work that you did as well with this project. Absolutely. Speakers for.
A question first, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Baker.
Thanks. Just a question, if I can, through to, I think it would be to perhaps the CEO. The report makes reference to the funding shortfall, of course. I'm aware of that. It suggests ways of dealing with that funding shortfall. In particular, at the tail end of paragraph 2 of the recommendation, it states, and I quote, which will require a review of the draft long-term capital works program, potentially resulting in a reduction and or deferral of other projects listed in the 22-23, 24 and 24-25 financial years. Just by way of clarification, the term listed, does that mean projects which have been listed, but if you like, the construction, not the construction process, but the whole development process is not yet commenced? Or not?
CEO?
What's the meaning of listed?
No, it would mean projects that are currently listed in the forward years that council will need to review either their scope or expenditure or continuation of the project to enable funding to be released to fund the shortfall in this project.
So that, hypothetically speaking, just as supplementary, would, for example, the development or the further development of Heath Park, that's the park in the estate in Eglinton, known as Amberton, which has 3 rental tours. Is it possible that that park's development could be slowed or prejudiced, so to speak, in the event that, for example, a Peter takes from Paul scenario arises? I hate to see that happen. Is that a potentiality, or is that project in the clear because it's well and truly advanced where we've already agreed upon the actual concept plan, and we've already been through the community consultation process, and we're moving forward, so to speak, down towards the construction commencement date, please.
Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to preempt or influence any decision that council may make in reviewing the long-term financial plan. I would suggest, however, in council's approach to reviewing the long-term financial plan, they would give consideration to some aspects that Councillor Baker alluded to in his introduction, like is the project already receiving external funding, the status of the project, where the project is in its implementation journey. But the intention is for council to do a comprehensive review, and it will be up to council to determine the scope of that. But I think the comments Councillor Baker alluded to might be some criteria that council would use to do that review.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
I thank the Speaker in support, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So on the basis that we will not be robbing Peter to pay Paul, obviously I'm wholeheartedly in support of this recommendation. I've been in support of every single recommendation regarding this concept, going back to it being an embryonic concept well over 2 years ago. I'm not going to repeat everything I've said before. We all know we support this project. We want to see it happen. We will find the money. Where there's a will, there's a way. And we'll try and get this matter fast-tracked to the max. So, yes, wholly supported. And, of course, I would expect a unanimous decision in support of this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Speakers against? The speakers for? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a few quick points, and mainly one at Dr. Howard. And since being elected to council, I've found your motivation and inspiration sort of of very significant to me, because no matter how much opposition, how many years it's taken, and you've faced the council many times, you've faced community, you've brought all the stakeholders together, and I think that should be commended in terms of your work towards this project. And I personally found it inspiring for me to show that there is a way possible and there is a way forward along that you get everyone on board. So I just want to make that note to you and your team, and obviously getting the cycle community on board. I'm in support of this project for the reasons of obviously supportive of youth, tourism, the cycle community, and I think it is a well thought out planned project. And you mentioned Councillor Flood and his efforts towards disability improvement of the track and the project, and I think that should be commended as well for his hard work. So I'm very supportive of the project, and I can't wait to come and visit it once it's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to say a fantastic congratulations to you, Chris, for actually managing to get this far. I've been with you for 2 years now on this journey, and it has been quite a challenge, but to see it go this far, and for now this support for you and for us to actually make sure this happens. There are other grants that I'm sure we can utilise on other projects, so we can make this happen for you. And I think this is just such a good benefit to Wanneroo and to Yanchep itself. And I can't wait to see it being used. And I think it's going to get built before we all go to electric bikes, so it'd be pretty cool.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Aitken.
Thank you, Mayor. I remember when Councillor Coetzee was first elected, and when she was elected, she came up with this idea of putting the bike track around Splendid Park. And we were so excited getting all of the structures done and working out how to do it. I mean, right from when I virtually started on council, this has been, bike paths and how we using bikes within the city of Wanneroo has been brought up. I just want to say I'm really, really grateful for the significant grant from our current federal government towards this project, and I'm really happy to support this project and move forward. It's really exciting for the community, particularly with the train station at Yanchep. People will get on the train with their bikes, get off, race around the Criterion track, spend money up in Yanchep, then get back on the train and go home. This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Treby.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and absolutely, of course, full support for this project. And both Chris and I know this has gone back a considerable period of time. Well before Splendid Park was even thought about, we were trying to work out how we could possibly get this project up. I will, and I really do want to acknowledge the work of Chris, the good doctor, because not only, and it's not the location, but the design and function of the facility has got Chris's fingerprints on it. And if it wasn't for his work on the advisory committee, providing that advice, we wouldn't have a concept, anything close to this. So I think Dr. Howard should take a huge feather in his cap for that work. And Chris personally, we finally got there, mate.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Rowe.
Thanks, Mayor. And as I said, I'm conscious that I haven't been around the table for a long time, but from what I've seen so far, Dr. Howard and the people who have come with you throughout this journey and have stocked the chamber as well, it's a good demonstration of the amount of hours that go in behind the scenes. I'm conscious that Sometimes this is happening on top of work commitments. This is working groups. This is volunteer hours. These are efforts that go above and beyond to deliver upon a project and a service for our community. It will be great to see the city's cycle plan be complementing a cycling facility that will support both recreational and competitive cycling. And as Councillor Aiken's already said, to do with the train station, we'll be having hopefully heavily subsidised train fares as well. So it means that people will be able to go anywhere in the metro area, particularly up to Yanchep, to be able to use this facility once it's open. So fully commend you and the city's administration and the council for advocating this project for a very long time.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Savitten?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I also would like to congratulate Mr Chris Howard. We go back a long way, as Councillor Treby has said, well before the two ovals were actually planned and even thought of, when TOCU were involved, and the number of meetings that Mr Howard came to with his group, talking about road safety, etc., and cycling on our roads and the problems we're having there. And now this will take a lot of the pressure off people who are actually going to use the roadways, and many have lost their lives on them by cycling on the road. So certainly this is a great effort and a great achievement for Yanchep, and it will be something that I'm very proud of in terms of this council and the way that the two ovals have led to a criterion track around the ovals, which will certainly appease all the cyclists. So thank you very much, and good effort.
Thank you, Councillor Savitten. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillors, if I can please ask you to cast your vote. Thank you. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to AS03, can I please have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Councillor Treby. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Savitten. Councillor Treby, would you like to speak to this item?
I reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Savitten.
Similar, thank you.
Thank you. Speakers for? Speakers against? Putting the recommendation, if you could please cast your vote. Thank you. I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving on to AS04, can I please have a mover and seconder for AS04? Thank you, Councillor Sangali. And do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Sangali, you wish to speak to this item?
Not necessarily, Madam Mayor. I think this one speaks for itself.
Thank you. Councillor Parker?
Just a quick one, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to support the terms, and may I add that it's a pleasure to be a part of such a passionate group of residents. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Speakers against? Speakers for? If I could, councillors, if I could please ask you to cast your vote. Thank you. Declare that carried unanimously. Moving on to community and place, can I please have a mover and seconder for CP01? Thank you, Councillor Savitten. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Councillor Savitten?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Very briefly, look, this is a great opportunity for the city to accept a 1.235 million grant for these very important stages in the Yallagongga Regional Park. There have been comments made about antisocial behaviour, etc., but I'm sure that that will be well and truly taken into control. But these are important. Yallagongga needs to be developed more fully over the next years. There's still a lot of places that need a lot of work, but these five stages, etc., are very important in the context of Yallagongga. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Savitten. Councillor Huntley?
I can't wait to see this project materialise, and to get such a good grant is absolutely wonderful. This will basically not affect our funds or our reserves, and so let's just hope, wait and see some action. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Speakers for? Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, it is always great to get funding for these sort of projects up and running. I think it's a very good staging process that administration have taken to obviously build within the allocated funding being provided by the state government of 1.235 mil. As we know, sometimes you can put out some very nice plans and drawings, and the community does like to see that, the whole effect. I do sometimes get concerned that we might oversell a project, but I think this report articulates very clear that we're going to use the funding that's been allocated by the state government to build the tower and some platform, and to obviously build it within the funding allocation. So I'm very happy to accept that funding and then obviously work through the next few years to add to the project to finalise the project as a whole.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be voting in support of this item as this is a great investment for the Central Ward, Yellowgonga Park and Wanneroo residents. I have been assured by Ms Terrelink and administration that this project will be cost neutral to the city. However, the devil was in the detail, and I'm concerned that the shortfall from the 1.235 million that was covered in the grant will not cover the cost of the bird tower and will only just fund the boardwalk, providing that the boardwalk is under the given funding. I do ask that the city, and I do see in the recommendation to the state government that there will be talks about hopefully increasing the funding, as the current proposal doesn't allow for the bird tower to be built, and therefore will pose as a risk to the city to fund a state politician's election commitment. Therefore, without the additional funding, I don't want the burden of residents to fund the shortfall of costs from residential rates. I do ask the city to make sure that they do secure the total funding for the bird tower beforehand, and if unsuccessful, remove the bird tower from the scope and only proceed with the boardwalk. Overall, I am supporting this item with the condition that the full funding is provided by the state without rates being used to fund this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My husband and I ride the whole of the lake at least once a month. I was going to say twice, but that would have been stretching it. I'm looking forward to these added facilities along what is already a jewel in the city's crown. It's wonderful to see the state government placing the importance they are in this vital wetland chain, and I do thank them for that. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Speakers against? Speakers for? I'm putting the recommendation. Please cast your vote. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to CPO2, and move Councillor Treby, seconded Councillor Sangali. Councillor Treby, you wish to speak to this item?
Look, just very briefly, Madam Mayor, I think this item, as read, is probably one of the best success stories we've had in community consultation. And certainly the comments that have come back and the engagements have been overwhelmingly positive. I think the project is being embraced by the community. There are lots of suggestions, positive suggestions, and very few negative suggestions. And I think this promises to be a facility that's built for the region and will absolutely be embraced from day one when it comes through. If the comments and the support from the community are anything to go by, wholeheartedly support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillor Sangali.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also too mirror Councillor Treby's comments, and I would really like to thank the community who have contributed to this. It's their voices that will actually get this all the way across the line, including funding, and this really is truly a community project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sangali. I would like to speak in favour of this recommendation and reflect on the previous years when Councillor Sangali and I put the motion on notice to Council and really appreciated the support of Council. To find within the community we have one 25-metre pool and aquamotion that was under incredible pressure trying to support 214,000 residents, and schools that we found were struggling to get swimming lesson time. That was only but a couple of the reasons why we desperately need the Alkimos Aquatic Recreation Centre, and to receive such strong support from the community indicates clearly that we are absolutely on the right track. So great project, and we continue on the journey. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Coetzee.
Thank you. I totally agree with what has been said already. The only thing I can add on is I have never seen such a big feedback from the community in my life. This is amazing. It only tells me one thing: the community wants this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coetzee. Speakers against?
Question, Madam Mayor, please.
Councillor Baker.
To the CEO. Yes, my question is directed to the CEO. In terms of the specific site within the Alkimos District Centre, has the city, in conjunction with Develop WA, been able to identify, or to narrow down, I should say, the sites and the locations of the sites, even though there may not be an agreement regarding a particular specific site, please?
Thank you. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, and for you, Madam Mayor. Yes, negotiations have progressed in terms of identifying the site, and we're hoping to finalise the land transaction details to present a report to Council in the April or May meeting. I might ask the Director of Corporate Strategy Performance if there's anything else to add, but we're fairly sure we have the site. It's just the finalisation of the terms of the purchase that we're finalising at present. But Mrs. Jennings?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, there's not much more to add. We're waiting for Development WA, so at this point I'd prefer to say May meeting than April, because we haven't actually received anything back just yet. So.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings.
Madam Mayor, please.
A supplementary question. Thank you.
Once again, a question to the CEO, which he may send to, flick to Nolene. But also the other issue is the nature of how the city will hold the ultimately approved site. Part freehold, leasehold, Crown Reserve, wholly freehold. Has that issue, or had those issues, or has that actually, it's one issue or maybe a mix of issues, have they been resolved, or are they dependent upon what the actual site proper will be?
Thank
and where
you,
it's
Mr.
located?
CEO.
Thank you, and for you, Madam Mayor. They are the last items that we are finalising with our negotiations between Development WA and the city, and as Mrs. Jennings alluded to, hoping to present those finalisations to the May Ordinary Council meeting.
Thank you.
Speaker in support.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, well, this is just yet another small step in what has been a long journey, and hopefully we're getting near the 400-metre mark, so to speak, of the marathon. But yeah, reading through the survey responses, given that we had somewhat 18,000 or 19,000, just rounded up to 20,000 engagements, the numbers are very reliable. It's interesting to note that one of the things that was disliked the most, of course, was the suggestion that there was no need for a warm water pool. I mean, you could have guessed what the response to that would have been. I mean, as it is, I think people, in particularly in the Antip Lagoon area, up at Alkimos, Turox, they're getting used to, or have been getting used to, until quite recently, to swimming in 28, 27-degree water every weekend. So, yeah, we've become, I suppose, a bit soft in our old age, although there's still a very strong, popular group of oldies who do the morning swim each morning at the lagoon. Yeah, so the responses are great. It's given us even further direction, and also, of course, the action column basically endorses the numbers in terms of the responses to the various categories of questions that were posed to the responders. So, yep, it's another important step. A great idea. It's moving along well, and let's hunt down some more money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Not much else to be said. I did want to just quickly touch on the fact that although the numbers and the level of engagement has been impressive, one of the things that I like the most is the constructive feedback that has come from residents at a very early stage, because that gives administration the opportunity to rectify some of those issues now and make sure that when the facility is open to the public, it is state of the art and it is of a high quality nature. I asked the questions last week about the proximity to this train station, and I think that will make the facility more accessible. It'll be close to train and to bus, and I'm very hopeful that we can undertake similar community consultation going into the future, because it seems like a really good balance between online, standard, and getting as much feedback as possible.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Rowe. Speakers against? Speakers for? Putting the Councillor Parker.
Absolutely no surprise that the city had the community participation it did in this engagement strategy. And I sincerely hope that this enforces to all future funding sources, private and government, the importance and benefits to all of the centre going forward ASAP. May I add my congratulations to Mrs. Terrelling's team on the highly professional engagement strategy and excellent presentation across the board. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Speakers against? Speakers for? Putting the recommendation, if you could please cast your votes. Thank you. I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. CP03, moved Councillor Treby, seconded Councillor Herridge. Councillor Treby, you wish to speak to this item?
Better ask. Can I say, I think this, let me just start by saying this has become one of the most popular locations for families on the weekends down in that family zone area down at Kingsway. If you were to go there, there are people having picnics. There are families setting up with tables, having birthday parties. Just an enormous level of activity. And it was always the focus to try and get more than just a sporting focus at Kingsway. Bringing families there was always the approach, and it's been fantastic. I think the option that's been presented by administration is a sensible option. It'll allow us to achieve and maintain a level of functionality, but stage the full development over a period of time to ensure that we end up with the optimum outcome for the community. I can't go past just some of the comments. One in particular, it's interesting that these are all anonymous comments, but there's a complete standout one for me on page 218. I really don't need to refer to it, but there are old records that do continue to die hard, with one particular local who doesn't like some of the projects that the city provides. That said, I think the report is exceptional, and I commend it to all of council.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillor Herridge? Okay, speakers for? Speakers against? Putting the recommendation, if you could please cast your vote. Declare that carried. Thank you. Moving on to CP04, Councillor Treby, you have a declaration of interest.
Yes, Madam Mayor. With regard to CP0403-22, I declare that I work for the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries, and they provide this particular fund. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Do we have a mover for CP04? Thank you, Councillor Civic. Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Civic.
Self-explanatory, Madam Mayor. It's a good result for Heath Park, etc. and the Kingsway Little Athletics and Splendid Park floodlighting upgrade. So they're great achievements. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor St Vincent. Councillor Baker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just endorse what I should say, what Councillor St Vincent just said. Heath Park has been very much a needy case, of course. You're probably sick of hearing me refer to the 3 transportable dunnies that constitute the club facilities at that park. But I see that in terms of the application, we didn't get full-toed odds. We're shy $309,000, but hopefully we can find that in a budget saving. I thought to be frank, I do think that the way that the state government assessed the various applications was fair, just and equitable, and clearly merit-based, particularly given the population numbers on the coastal strip, as I call it. Yes, so a good report, fantastic, good news, and we can move on with Heath Park as well as the other projects listed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Speakers for? Councillor Aitken.
Thank you. I'm happy to receive this funding for Heath Park and the Little Athletic Centre and Splendid Park, but I am concerned that the Wanneroo BMX floodlighting upgrade was not accepted for funding. I do ask that administration contact the Wanneroo BMX people and see if they can help them with another application, but it's very disappointing because that group of people and that community group serve a lot of young people and youth in the community, and to have lighting upgrade there is essential for their sport. And they're used every night, and I'm very disappointed that the state government didn't fund that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate Councillor Aitken's points and the benefit of what the Wanneroo BMX Club served the community of Pearsall. I do know I have a motion on notice coming up later, but just in terms of the funding, I hope Ms Terralink and the team will work with the BMX Club for the next round, and obviously make sure that the idea has more planning work needed, which is in the report. So thank you. I will be supporting this, and it's great to see the other projects on there as well.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Speakers against? Speakers for? No, councillors, I concur with other councillors with regards to the recommendation, and good news for Heath Park and the Kingsway Little Athletics and those projects that are very deserving. However, as highlighted by councillors, it is very disappointed that the BMX Club's application has not been successful. And however, heartened that the administration will continue to liaise with the Wanneroo BMX about their intentions with this project, and understanding that it is a hive of activity on a Friday evening, as Councillor Wright has just articulated, and it's amazing how many people are actually there. So this is a disappointing result for them, and I know Mrs Terralink and her team work hard. We do have the BMX working group, which I think obviously will be addressing this, and certainly from the City of Wanneroo's perspective, we do appreciate the work of the BMX, but congratulate the other grants that have been provided to the other deserving clubs too. Speakers against? Speakers for? Putting the recommendation, all those in favour, if you could please cast your vote. Declare that carried. So for members of the gallery, we used to be able to, all those in favour, show of hands, and all those against, show of hands, and now we've transferred over to the electronic voting, so it kind of trips off the vote. So I've got to maintain the fact that I say if you could please cast your vote. Moving on to corporate strategy and performance, CSO1. Can I please have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Treby. And do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Treby.
Madam Mayor, the strategic budget policy is an exceptionally important document. Certainly there are many people in our community who are unfamiliar with the level of work and rigour and integrity that goes into budget settings and long-term budget policy. This particular policy, I think, is an excellent example of how the city and council work together to make sure that we're doing as best we can, not just for the annual budgets, but also for the long-term financial future for the city. And it's important to also understand, oh, excuse me. It's important to also understand that there are two concepts that are not well clearly understood by many in the community. One is the concept of stewardship, and the other is the concept of intergenerational equity. We need to make sure that we're doing the right things for today's community, bearing in mind all of the inputs and stresses and strains on budgets and projects and services, but also for the long-term serviceability of the facilities and services and assets for the community. Because the assets that are owned by the city are in fact the assets that are owned by the residents, because they are the shareholders in the city's assets, and we are their representatives. And we represent everyone equally and equitably across the city. So this is a fantastic document, well constructed. Mrs Jennings, I congratulate you and your team for this document. And for anyone who wishes to have a look at how the processes work for setting budgets, both in the short and then through to the medium and long term, ought just read the structure and complexity of the matters that need to be considered, and you'll come to some degree of understanding about how budgets are structured in a very large organisation that provides a wide range of services and assets for all of our community. And I commend this report to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Treby summed it up very well, and putting that emphasis on stewardship and accountability, and also the intergenerational equity, particularly planning for now, but also the future. So congratulations to Ms Jennings and her team for the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Sangali.
I'm sorry, I should have picked this up earlier, but I found a typo again. It's just under the section of who needs to know about the policy, and we're missing a comma. So at the moment it reads as we have community contractors rather than community contractors. Thank you.
Got a nod from Mrs Jennings. That will be fixed. Thank you. Speakers for? Okay. Putting the recommendation, if you could please cast your vote. Thank you. I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving on to CSO2. Can I please have a mover and seconder for CSO2? Thank you, Councillor Savitten. Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillor Savitten, wish to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Treby.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Speakers for? And speakers against? Putting the recommendation CSO2, can I please ask you to cast your vote? Thank you. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to CSO3, can I please have a mover and seconder for CSO3? Thank you, Councillor Treby. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Treby, you wish to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, not Councillor Wright, Councillor Rowe. No, Councillor Rowe, you wish to speak to this item. Speakers for?
Questions?
Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor, yes, Councillor Baker.
Yes, just a couple of questions. I think these questions have to be asked by Noelene. I think Jennings, correct? It depends. We'll see what the quality of the question is. Next on page, straight up, page 3910 of the agenda, item or line number 1163, there's reference to the city paying the business Roads 2004 the sum of $438,000 to repair a footpath in Studmaster Park. What was the length of the footpath, I should say, and the width? Seems to be a lot of money to fix up a footpath, unless I've misconstrued the particulars.
I mean, I will ask the directors, but they might not have that information to hand. It might be helpful in future, Councillor Baker, that if you have any questions, that you submit them through to the administration so that they can prepare.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I've been busy the last couple of weeks or so. I apologise for that.
So, Mr. Singh, are you able, or Mrs. Jennings, are you able to answer?
Madam Mayor, this appears to be payment for multiple projects, but I'm happy to check that and provide further information.
Take that on notice, thank you. Further questions, Councillor Baker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Page 311 of the agenda, line item 1035. The payee is MNG Proprietary Limited. The amount of money is $28,000. Particulars: beach survey and structure monitoring, October 2021. Of course, that was some time ago now. Which particular beach was surveyed? What was the nature of the survey? And what is meant by the term structure monitoring, please?
Mr. Singh?
Madam Mayor, we do have a coastal monitoring program where we actually monitor the movement of coastline twice a year. And we undertake an aerial survey where a plane flies through the city's coastline and then picks up the data for us, and then we compare the data with the previous year. So that's a payment for 6 monthly survey.
Thank you. Councillor Baker?
Just two very quick ones. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Next item is on page 301 of the agenda. Line item is line item is 747. The pay reads applied security force. Amount is $636. Particulars: crowd controller for the staff's Christmas party in 2021. Were there any citizens' arrests or not? No. Was it necessary to call the police? No. Yes, is that really what it says for crowd control, security, bouncers?
Thank you.
And how many were necessary to control that crowd?
Thank you, Mrs. Terrelink, if you could please respond.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a requirement of liquor licensing that we have crowd control.
Thank you. You have a further question, Councillor Baker?
Last one, I promise, Madam Mayor. Where are we now? Page 294 of the agenda. Line item is 542. The payee is Workpower Incorporated. The amount is approximately $30,000. And the actual particulars read, mesh installation Burns Beach. Are those particulars correct? In other words, was it the case that the mesh installation was in fact installed at Burns Beach, or I don't know, was it borderline Burns Beach, Mindarie? It just seems strange that we're spending money on the suburb of Burns Beach, which is not wholly or partially situated within the boundaries of the city of Wanneroo.
Mr. Singh?
Madam Mayor, I'll reconfirm that, but my understanding is this is for the coastal dual use path, which is Burns Beach to Mindarie, and we have a jurisdiction within the city of Wanneroo where we are undertaking this work.
Thank you. Further questions or no further questions? Councillors, can I just advise we have the briefing session the week prior to the council meeting. If there are any questions at the briefing session, that enables the directors and the chief executive officer to be able to prepare a response so that you have the information prior to voting. So, and I acknowledge Councillor Baker, you've indicated that you were busy. However, even up until late afternoon today, if you could provide any questions to the directors or the chief executive officer, which will once again enable them to get the answers so that they can articulate that in the meeting prior to voting. Thank you. Speakers for? Speakers against? Putting the warrant of payments, if you could please cast your votes. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. CS04, can I please have a mover and seconder for CS04? Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Savitten. Councillor Rowe, you wish to speak to this item?
Yes, Mayor, just to briefly say that the level of tracking of financial performance and then the the follow-up, being able to put it in a report and to make it accessible to councillors and the public is very commendable. It's something that I wasn't fully aware of prior to coming onto council, so commending Director Jennings and Bimsara and the team for putting together this report.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Civic.
Yes, I concur with that, those comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good report.
Thank you. Speakers for? And speakers against? Putting the recommendation CS04, if you could please cast your vote. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving through to CS05, can I please have a mover and seconder for CS05? Thank you, Councillor Huntley, and thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillor Huntley, you wish to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Treby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very briefly, it's a really important policy for council members to consider and have in place, because one of the critical things, and most councillors, new councillors, aren't aware of this until they actually come onto council, is the enormous complexity involved in the work of a council law individually, but council collectively, in undertaking its role on the governing board of the organisation. Bearing in mind, of course, that councillors are ultimately responsible for what happens in the organisation, I think it's important that we're all suitably educated to the appropriate level to undertake effectively and efficiently the roles that the community have put us in place to do on their behalf. So I think this policy is a good example of how that will drive us to improve our performance and represent the community's interests in the work and direction of the City of Wanneroo.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Speakers for? Speakers against? Putting the recommendation, if you could please cast your vote. Declare that carried unanimously, bearing in mind that Councillor Baker is out of the chambers at this point in time. Thank you. Moving on to CS06, appointment of delegate to Heritage Services Advisory Group. Councillors, we have two nominations. Nomination received from Councillor Parker and a nomination received from Councillor Wright. So we will need to cast a vote for our delegates. Would you like to wait for Councillor Baker to return? Sorry, Councillor Wright.
Could I just make a quick point,
Yes.
or for my reason for nomination?
I don't think we need to hear that just yet. Thank you, Councillor Wright. What I might do is just ask if everybody is happy for this item to continue, or whether you will wish to wait for Councillor Baker to return to the chambers. Okay, we'll wait. So for those who are on air and wondering why it's long silence, we're just waiting on Councillor Baker returning to the council chambers before our next item. Councillors, what I think we might do while we're waiting for Councillor Baker, and there's been an indication that we would like to wait for Councillor Baker to return to the chambers, I think we'll go to the next item and we'll come back to CS06, given the fact that CS06 is actually voting on a delegate. So CS07, can I please have a mover and seconder for CS07? Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillor Rowe, you wish to speak to this item?
Thanks, Mayor. Just to acknowledge the hard work that went on behind the scenes for all the preparation for administration to get the AGM in place. So thank you very much, admin, for those efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Treby.
Madam Mayor, I just support those comments from Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. Speakers for? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think it is important that the reports and that was done for the annual electors general meeting was very clearly articulated and well put. Administration did do a very good meeting run by yourself, Mayor, and I think that one of the issues I think is we need to try and get more of our electors and our ratepayers maybe at the annual review, and I know we do all our best to put it on our social media, but it would be a good opportunity for electors and ratepayers alike to maybe come along or participate in some other form so they can ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Speakers against? Speakers for? Putting the recommendation CS07, if I could please ask you to cast your vote. Thank you. Declare that carried unanimously. Moving on to CS06. We have, so we are now looking at the delegate for the Heritage Service Advisory Group. Councillor Wright has requested an opportunity to speak for 2 minutes. And then I'll also afford the same opportunity to Councillor Parker, if needed. Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor, for giving me the opportunity. I just wanted to bring the point that as the city's chosen delegate for the Wanneroo Historical Society, I thought it would be useful to be able to know the heritage items that do pass in the committee, to be able to convey that to the group. And I thought that would be an important point to be able to know what the heritage items are and what the city is doing around its policies, and also around future items that may come to council, that I can also convey this information to the Wanneroo districts and historical society. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Parker.
Madam Mayor, I actually have nothing to say to that. I'm quite happy just to leave it as it is. I'd like to be a member of the Heritage Services Advisory Group, and it's up to everybody else. Sorry, I didn't have anything prepared.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parker. Okay, so we are, councillors, we are casting our votes. So the nomination received will, Councillor Sangali.
Madam Mayor, can I just ask a question about the membership of the Heritage Society? Because I've noticed Councillor Wright brought up about the Historical Society. It's my understanding that the current community members are already members of the Historical Society and would be relaying that information anyway.
Mrs. Terrelink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd need to confirm that the two members of the, the three members, community members that are on the Heritage Advisory Group are also on the Wanneroo Historical Society. I'm not sure if that is the case. It may well be the case, but I'd need to confirm that.
On that basis, it might be appropriate for, unless this is time sensitive, Mrs. Terrelink, that we have a procedural motion to refer that back so we can identify that, because that's important. Yes, Councillor Baker.
I move that procedural motion that the matter be deferred pending clarification as to the constitution of that committee. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's moved, Councillor Baker. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillors putting the procedural motion, if you could please cast your vote. Thank you. Declare that carried. Thank you. Moving on, so CS07 we have done. Councillors, the governance and legal, effectively our recommendations from the audit committee. So unless there are any exceptions, I intend to put CEO1, CEO2, CEO3 and CEO4 on block. Councillor Baker?
Madam, I'd like to debate to CEO4 if I may. Please.
Okay, so we'll put 1 to 3 on block. You happy with 1 to 3 on block? Yes?
Yes.
That's moved Councillor Civic, seconded Councillor Treby. So CEO1, CEO2, CEO3, we are now voting. If you could please cast your votes. Thank you. I declare those items carried unanimously. CEO4, can I please have a mover and seconder for CEO4? Thank you, Councillor Treby. Thank you, Councillor Civic. And Councillor Baker, you had a question? All right, okay, thank you. No, if there's no question, I'll go straight to the mover. Councillor Treby?
I reserve my right.
Thank you. Councillor Civic?
Yes, same, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Speakers for? Speakers against? Councillor Baker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and be very brief. Of course, the amendment to the terms of reference in agenda item CEO3-3/22, that amendment was a minor amendment. It was necessary to ensure that the relevant provision within our terms of reference comply with the law. Under the law, we cannot pay an external member a fee or consideration for his attendance. We can only pay for his reasonable expenses in terms of travelling to and from meetings and attending at meetings. So that's why that was necessary as a matter of law for the terms of reference to be amended to reflect the law. Now, the point is this, and this is my point, and there are several others, I'll make it, but the point is this. This policy has been in place for several years. The city has never had the need to look elsewhere for an external consultant to be a member of the committee. The city employs highly skilled, highly trained, highly qualified and very, very experienced auditors, etc., chartered accountants and the like, to prepare audit reports after audit reports after audit reports. As with all audit reports, they have the usual broad sort of disclaimer, so to speak, but that is common in the industry. Now, the point is this, before we can determine the need as to whether we have a gap, so to speak, in terms of expertise of any nature description kind, on the existing composition or within the existing composition of this committee, we need to first of all determine what the current skills and expertise, so to speak, of the members of the Audit and Risk Committee are. Surely we'd have to conduct that assessment first before being able to identify any specific possible deficiencies, so to speak, in terms of the skill set that the members of this committee offers the city. That process, of course, I would have thought just simply makes sense and is logical. And as I said when this matter was last discussed, why is it that now, in March 2022, it's been decided that we have a need to, if you like, co-opt an independent person with expertise in the various categories referred to in the amended terms of reference to assist us in our deliberations? The point is this, and historically, as a simple example, and this is quite unique, I didn't realise this until last week, but in the last 2 years, at least up until October last year, this city had 3 legal practitioners as elected members. The first, of course, was Councillor Nguyen, who did not seek re-election in October last year. He's a former long-term legal practitioner of some 18 years standing, former long-term Crime and Corruption Commission lawyer, and of course he's now in private practice working as a corporate lawyer. We have, of course, Councillor Vindun, of course, who is a self-employed private practitioner, specialising in, amongst other things, as I understand it, commercial law, which invariably involves issues involving taxation of various kinds, GST, you name it, income tax, fringe benefits tax and the like, excise duties as well, in certain instances. And of course myself, of course I've obviously been practising for a few years, because the point is this, and just in relation to the A&R committee, issues that come up just don't involve auditing, accounting issues, they involve other issues. Invariably they are legal issues. So the blend, the mix is legal issues and accounting, auditing issues. And of course, when it comes to accounting, specifically in relation to tax, any tax law of any nature, description, state or federal, The tax law, of course, is a law which, of course, then overlaps into the area of the profession known as the legal profession. The other thing is that my understanding is, and I haven't had this confirmed yet, but my understanding is that Councillor Berry is a former chartered accountant from the UK. She is a FA with international standards regarding accounting and also with other standards that apply specifically in the NGO area of the community. She heads up two NGOs. What I'm saying to you is I can't see the point to appoint a so-called independent member in circumstances where we don't know what our need is. We won't know what the committee's needs are until we've conducted the skills assessment of existing elected members to see what they can contribute. Once that assessment is conducted, then if we see that there is some, or if we believe there is some sort of a shortfall in the total skill set of the members of the A&R committee, then we'll know exactly and precisely what skill set we need to look for by appointing an external member to that committee. And that skill set, of course, can be very narrowly defined rather than simply having a broad skill set. If the shortfall following the, if you like, the skill set audit I referred to is conducted and it identifies a very specific skill set need, well, of course, we can go to the community and seek to engage an outside member with that who will be capable of fulfilling a very, very narrow, discrete skill set. And it may well be that the skill set will, of course, obviously differ from council to council because of the nature of the fact that the city has local government elections every 2 years. So if common sense applies, conduct that skill set shortfall audit first before putting third parties, appointing third parties as outside members of the A&R committee. That I would have thought is pretty obvious. The other thing too is that I'd be very surprised indeed if for some reason there's a view that we need a chartered accountant with auditing experience, senior chartered accountant with auditing experience to be a member. You'd be hard pressed to find a chartered accountant who could stay at home and bill out at say $600 an hour or $660 now, including GST. Who'd be prepared to sit through 3 to 4 hour audit and risk committee meetings, plus time travelling to and from meetings, and only be paid for his out-of-pocket expenses. You'd be hard pressed. That particular auditor would be best advised to be assisting the charitable sector rather than assisting a local government entity. So they're my observations, and for that reason, I can't support the proposed, or at least the last paragraph within the recommendation, because we have not yet conducted the needs assessment, which would trigger the need to perhaps look for third-party assistance to assist the A&R committee in its deliberations. We already have expert advice, and I think we pay something like, what, $780,000 per annum each year on auditing, using expert third-party independent auditors. They're my observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Speakers for? Councillor Rowe.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be very brief. Just in terms of one thing that Councillor Baker said in his remarks, I don't believe that in supporting the motion tonight that I'm suggesting that we have a deficiency of skills or qualifications around the table at our Audit and Risk Committee. I'm supporting it in the hope that it will mean an additional voice, someone who does not have voting rights at a seat at the table, and ensuring that over time the number of people on the committee, but also the qualifications of those members do change as we go through election cycles. So what I'm hopeful is that this will offer an additional voice, and that can be of guidance to us. That's the reason I'm supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Speakers against? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And like I suggested in the forum when we had this item come up for us previously, I do believe that councillors are elected by the ratepayers to deliver for and on behalf of them in every aspect that we do. This administration has a very, very professional and worthwhile staff base, and it's very good in its whole financial management from the CEO down. I have been to other organisations, including other local governments, that don't have the level of experience and expertise that we have around that table. The other part of the concern I have is we as a council, we employ William Buck to do our internal auditing. They answer to us as councillors. They're not administration's auditors. They're our auditors working on behalf of us to what we set their task to do. So they are, in fact, our independent audit to make sure that our administration is carrying out the financial management and all of the other requirements that we need as a council to stay legal and focused moving forward. I have known other councils to get external auditors, and they need it because their level of staff are not at the same capacity as ours. Also, our Audit and Risk Committee has all of our councillors on it. That's all 15 of us. Other councils don't have that level of commitment on audit and risk. They might have 3, they might have 4, and the like, and therefore they would need to have that other backup use. They also don't have their external auditor or internal auditor attend that meeting every time because they may not have one. So I think as a large council as we are, with the expertise of councillors and also the auditors that we employ currently, which is William Buck, I think we have that expertise. And I don't see how having an external auditor sit at the table, whoever he or she may be, is going to be able to deliver anything different to the expertise that we currently have around that table. You as councillors are a diverse area of the community, from, public servants, lawyers, former lawyers and the like. You're all very, in that area. Teachers, nursing, the whole lot. We've had all of those professions around that table. And I can say that everybody asked outright questions that are right and proper. So I don't support external auditors. I didn't have a problem maybe changing the terms of reference to meet up with what's required at a state level, but I think the motion goes a little too far, requesting the CEO to go out for advertising to look for an external auditor.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Speakers for.
Question?
Question, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through the chair. Yes, of course, the previous agenda item affected the amendment regarding the reimbursement of expenses only, not the payment of fees. But in the terms of reference, under the actual heading of external independent members, it states, and I quote, "External independent members, if appointed, must have senior business, etc., experience." Yet in the actual terms of reference, the selection criteria in paragraph 1B, it just simply says the person must have experience and/or knowledge in business, risk management, business management and auditing. The word senior expressly referred to, deliberately so I would have thought, in the relevant term of reference I quoted before, you would have thought would be incorporated within the selection criteria, because if not, of course, then it basically contradicts the terms of reference in terms of leaving out the key word, which is a very important word, senior. Just wondering, why was that word left out, please? Was it just like a slip of the pen, or was it deliberate? I don't understand the rationale. Obviously, unless it goes in there, of course, then, quote, any person, or the person, must simply have experience and/or knowledge in business, financial management, risk management and auditing. And I think it's fair to say most business proprietors in Australia, small, big, medium, have that experience. As to whether or not they've been in business for a week or 5 years or 10 years or 37 years, that's a matter of determining what the seniority is. But the seniority test seems to have slipped off the criteria, despite that term senior being expressly used in the term of reference. So just wondering, I'm not sure who could assist me here, Nolene or Daniel, the CEO. Why is it we no longer need someone with senior business, etc., experience, please?
Thank you. Mr Sims.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My recollection of the Audit and Risk Committee was a request from the committee that the actual selection criteria that was articulated in that report be replicated in the resolution as opposed to the terms of reference. So if council wished to add senior, they could by an amendment this evening. But my understanding of the intent from the Audit and Risk Committee at that committee meeting was to translate from the report on seeking the Audit and Risk Committee's advice on an external member to incorporate the criteria that was in the body of the report into the recommendation, which is what has happened and was passed by resolution of the Audit and Risk Committee.
Supplementary, Madam Mayor?
Thank
Final
you,
supplementary.
Councillor Baker.
Once again, the introductory words of the relevant paragraph in the approved terms of reference that we approved a few minutes ago reads, and I quote, external independent members, if appointed, must, not could, may, or if we feel like it, must, which means should, which means shall, must have senior business, financial management, etc., skills. So I think the terms of the criteria don't go as far, well, they do not, in a nutshell, they do not comply with that particular paragraph of the terms of reference because that keyword senior is missing. Beyond that, in any event, of course, I'm opposed to the motion, as I said, because it's not necessary. It's premature to engage anyone, appoint anyone until the skill assessment is
I'll direct that question through to the CEO, Mr Sims.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I have anything further to add to my previous response in that the recommendation as presented is as a result of the recommendation from Audit and Risk. And if the Council, after now considering the Audit and Risk Committee recommendation, wishes to insert the additional words from the terms of reference, then that is open to Council to do that via amendment this evening.
Thank you. Speakers for, Councillor Treby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding about what Audit and Risk does, what its role is, and how Audit and Risk as a committee deals with the separation of power and the responsibility of the governing body. Audit and Risk is part of the assurance process that the governing body requires to ensure that the work of the administration is meeting appropriate standards and fiduciary responsibilities. The comment about the internal audit is absolutely correct. The internal auditors work for council to provide that assurance. They don't work for the administration. They are there to provide independent assurance. I'm actually quite surprised that we wouldn't be seeking, or at the very least going with the benchmark standard from the Australian National Audit Office, and indeed the standards that are indeed provided by the state and the department in its guidelines. Guideline number 9 issued September 13. And it's not as if it's a first. There are many local governments who have external auditors. It should come as, or it may come as a surprise to some councillors, but every local government has to have and must have an internal auditor. It's not they don't have them, they must have them, and an external auditor. The reality is the governing board needs assurance from the internal auditors and the Audit and Risk Committee that the work of the administration is being done in a competent manner. And suggesting, and there appears to be a suggestion that, well, if you have everyone around the table, we should hopefully get it right. And I'd suggest that we don't have always got the requisite skills to necessarily meet that standard. You'd only have to go to a large recent case, and it's a corporate case, and it's ASIC versus Healy, which is the Centro case. I've raised this before with council, in that Centro is a very large commercial property owner and manager, and in one financial year they had a massive write-down of their assets. And this is now case law, and this goes to this very issue, because there are two things in the Local Government Act. It does say that an elected council or a council is elected as the governing board of the corporation, because the City of Wanneroo is set up as a body corporate, not a body politic, firstly. And secondly, that governing board has full legal and lawful responsibility for the actions of the organisation. So 2 critical things. Thirdly is there is a separation between the governing board and the administration, purposefully so, it's embedded in the Act. And the process of assurance is what the council, sitting as that governing board, requires to undertake its duties on behalf of the ratepayers. Now, in ASIC versus Healy, there was a massive write-down in debts, and the administration of Centro treated that, and it's a multi-million-dollar write-down, treated that as a non-current liability. And if anyone would know or understand in accounting and auditing terms, if you have a write-down of that magnitude, it's a current liability. It went through the CFO, it went through the CEO, it went through internal audit, external audit missed it, and ultimately it went through to the board, the governing body, and they didn't pick it up. And the buck stops with the board. They're legally responsible. ASIC in Healy, ASIC were successful, and they found against the CFO, the CEO, and the board members, essentially saying, notwithstanding, they should have all picked it up, the buck stops with you, and you ask the questions, and you must know what questions to ask. Having somebody potentially join the Audit and Risk Committee with an independent view, and a truly independent view, not a vested view, not a there's no biases involved, I think is something that should be welcomed, absolutely welcomed. I'm all ready for and embrace ethics and accountability. This would do nothing but enhance that. And I absolutely support it for all of the reasons I raised. Quantity, having all of the members around Audit and Risk Committee, doesn't necessarily equate to quality. So we can have everyone there, but if we're not asking the right questions, and that was just one example, and that's now case law, that deals with this very issue. So from my perspective, I'm absolutely happy to support this.
Question?
Thank you. No, Councillor Baker, I'm actually going to ask if everybody's against and speakers for. Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for. Councillor Civic.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I am supporting this. In all my time in council, the very early days, local government was very simple. Our agendas were very, very thin. In the last 20 years, the complexity of local government is enormous now. This council is in the top 3 largest councils in the metropolitan area, if not close to the top. And I look at the chart here on page 419, and on that chart from Melville down to Swan, there are only 2 councils that don't have representatives, external members, they being Wanneroo and Rockingham. Not all of us have those skills, the accounting skills, to absolutely understand the fundamentals of auditing, etc., etc. And by having an external member would be beneficial based on the complexity of local government today. Local government is big business, and we've got to make sure that we do things correctly. So I certainly am encouraging that we support this, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Speakers against? Speakers for? Okay, so thank you, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know it's well known how highly I value our outstanding administration. There is no question about that. Now more than ever, ensuring transparency is vital for our residents. Recommendation 1D says it all for me. The person is sufficiently impartial and disconnected from the city's operation, ensures that transparency without any doubt or question. I support this recommendation wholeheartedly And thank you, Councillor Treby, for your input. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Speakers against? Speakers for? And councillors, I am mindful, councillors, that this has been to the Audit and Risk Committee and that the recommendation on the notice paper is indeed the recommendation of the Audit and Risk Committee. There's been a resolution.
Question, Madam Mayor?
A question, Councillor Baker.
A couple of questions. I'll try and be very brief. Just with me, reference was made earlier in this debate.
Sorry, Councillor Baker, you've already spoken against this, and I'm going to cross-examine councillors that have actually spoken. So what is your question, please?
Yes, certainly. My question is addressed to the CEO. In terms of councils who do have external members on their A&R committees, what were those respective councils' respective selection criteria used by them? And in terms of who they appointed, what was the primary profession or expertise that they brought to those committees? Was it legal, financial, accounting?
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Mr Sims.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The decision really before council tonight is what does council think is right for their council and governing body. So I'm not aware of the decision-making framework that each of the other councils quoted in the report on page 419 used to determine whether an external member was required or not. But I note the advice provided by administration on 418 makes reference to the Australian National Audit Office and the Department of Local Government circular on operational guidelines for audit and risks. I don't have the information about the decision-making framework that the other councils may have offered, and I think I provided a similar response at the Audit and Risk Committee.
Thank you, Mr CEO. A subsequent question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just my question just to CEO. Is the CEO aware that the decision described as ASIC and Healy has no application whatsoever to local government in the Commonwealth of Australia or its territories, please?
Mr CEO.
Madam Mayor, I haven't had time to cast my mind to that question, but what is before council tonight is in relation to the recommendation from Audit and Risk for the appointment of an external member, and the report reflects to the ANAO and Department of Local Government guidelines that support the appointment.
Final question, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to go to right of reply in a minute, Councillor Treby.
Just final question, please. Is it possible to get a copy of Government Guideline Bulletin number 19, dated September 2013, that recommended or stated that local governments in respect of A&R committees should have an external member? Is it possible to get a copy of that bulletin, please? Is it possible to retrieve it from archives, please? Thank you.
Mr CEO.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will just reflect on documents already circulated to council. I thought the Acting Executive Manager of Governance and Legal may have provided that document as a result of a request from Audit and Risk Committee, but I will check to ensure that's the case, and if that's not the case, I will provide a copy on the Elected Members Hub.
Thank you. Councillor Treby, right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think with the debate, I think we could probably wrap that up. I will take note with the last comment Councillor Baker made with respect to the applicability of case law. It would be foolhardy, if not completely misleading, to ignore the fact that case law is not used when public law comes into play. Case law absolutely does. You'd actually only have to really go to the Standards Panel, because they often refer to Corporations Act in the Standards Panel finding against elected members in local government. So that's not true, and it's not a correct statement. Having said that, this report is about anything or everything about transparency. This is about doing the best we possibly can. Transparency on behalf of our ratepayers. I'm just quite surprised people don't welcome and embrace transparency, or seemingly don't want to embrace that concept of having an independent person come in and assist and guide. It's something that should be embraced and should wholeheartedly be supported, in my view.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. In closing debate, so councillors, if I could please ask you to... No, Councillor Treby has just closed debate. Councillor Baker.
I'm not debating on it. I just wish to ask one question.
No, Councillor Baker.
No more
Councillor Treby
questions,
has
okay.
just posted,
We're on the
he has
record.
just
Thank you.
closed the debate, and there's been plenty of opportunity, the briefing session and through this week, to ask the administration any questions that may concern you. And I've been incredibly indulgent this evening in allowing questions after you've actually spoken on this matter. Councillor Treby has just closed the debate. So, councillors, if I can please ask you to cast your vote. Thank you. I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, motions on notice. So we have our first item on notice is MN01. Councillor Treby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Treby, do you have a seconder?
Councillor Civic, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Civic.
I'll just get to that item, Madam Mayor. Just bear with me. Thank you. Councillors, just by way of briefly introducing this item, we are all aware of the Wanneroo Sports and Social Club and the building, their history, where they came from, and how there's been a long relationship with the city, the then Shire, to bring community together, and that was the basis for the original building, which was constructed, as I understand it, the first building in 1962. It is fair to say its condition is quite poor, and it's not well suited or well set up to see them into the future. And of course, the building is the basis of a lease between the city and the club. We have a responsibility to a large extent on the condition of the building, and I think it's an opportune time for the city to have a look at the functionality of that building, its future use, and how it's placed to allow the club to work right the way through to the future. The report's quite simple, and generally what it intends to do is work with the club, engage with the club in the context of its location, its building, and their future business case and business model to see what needs to be done, and have a look at that in a holistic manner to ensure that we master plan that location in conjunction with the club, to ensure that we can have a good look at what's required and potentially any staging matters that we might consider that would be undertaken over time. So the report is essentially saying, let's have a good look at it. Let's look at it holistically. Let's look at a master plan of the entire location. We must be cognizant of concurrent work that's happening down at the Wanneroo Recreation Centre. I think there was a bus trip a month or two, or a couple of months ago. We had a look down there, and we're all aware of the work that's going on in that area. There seems to be some good options and opportunities for us collectively to make a more strategic approach in conjunction with the club, and I think this will set up that it's actually quite unique. The location of the club, location of the showgrounds within the town centre, this is an opportunity we really do need to have a look at, and that's the intent of the motion on notice.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillor Savitton.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Treby, for bringing this motion on notice forward. Firstly, I'd like to say and thank Councillor Jordan Wright for coming down to see the Sportsman's Club with me and meet Mr Bob Fawcett, and he actually took us around to have a look at the facility, and we both agree, I think, that there's certainly, it needs to be looked at, and I commend Councillor Treby for bringing this motion forward, that we do an investigation into it and put the $50,000 into the 22-23 budget and have a good look at the premises. Yes, sorry. And have a good look at the premises to see really what needs to be done and to do a study on the total site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savitton. Speakers for? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies for my dampened spirits for the previous items, but I'll take the time to build myself back up. I would like to thank Councillor Civic for picking up the phone and letting me know that this motion on notice was coming to Council, to be able to understand the needs and the discussion that's been had around the Wanneroo Sports and Social Club. And I thank Bob for taking the time to invite me and Councillor Civic out to have a look at the site and to also get a bit of a visual inspection before coming into Council tonight. I do recognise the efforts and the membership base of the club, and I do understand that the building is starting to deteriorate. So I'm very supportive of Councillor Treby and Councillor Civit's motion on notice, and I'll be interested to see what comes through the budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Speakers against? Speakers for? Yes, Councillor Nguyen.
Just got a few
Speaking
questions,
for.
Mayor. Questions.
Thank you.
Do we know how many members the club have that's using the building at the moment?
Mrs. Terrelling? No, doesn't look like. Oh, Councillor Treby?
I don't know the exact numbers, other than that they have had an enormous increase in memberships, largely as a result of the closure of Bridgeley.
Thank you. Subsequent question, Councillor Nguyen.
Yes, Mayor. With the proposed $50,000, is that to investigate the potential options for to develop the site, and whether the city has any current plan or ideas what it could look like in the future?
Mr. Singh.
Madam Mayor, the way in our comments and in this motion and notices outlined, it's a functionality and condition audit. Functionality audit will look at how the building is functioning now, what it could do in future, depending upon the needs of the user groups and the stakeholders. And the condition audit will pick up the condition of the asset and what improvements is needed to be done to meet its current day standards.
And is it usual for us to seek community consultation before that, or is it after the audit report?
Mr. Singh.
Madam Mayor, as part of functionality audit, it's important for us to consult with the user groups. That's how we can determine that is it performing the functions is intended for which they use or not, and that'll help us to then identify what improvements could be required.
Sorry, can you clarify whether the user group has identified any particular proposal?
Mr. Singh.
Madam Mayor, not that I'm aware of. I do understand they do want to initiate some kind of work. They're thinking about it, but I haven't got the information in front of me at this point in time.
Thank you. Speakers against the motion on notice?
Question, Madam Mayor, please.
Councillor Baker.
Question. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just dealing with the issue of community consultation, my questions are directed to Harminder Singh. So just for the record, will it be the consultant who engages the community and consults with the community, or will it be the City of Wanneroo in accordance with its policy dealing with community consultation, please?
Mr. Singh.
Madam Mayor, we haven't actually developed a consultant's brief yet. As we develop consultant's brief, there could be an option for administration to stay involved, may form a project working group through the consultant and different officers from the city, and that may result in consultation with the user group. So we can do both ways. We haven't actually arrived at a final position yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers against? Question, Councillor Nguyen.
So just wanted to understand, so right now we're looking at spending $50,000 for the feasibility sort of study on the potential for this building, but we haven't heard from the user group what they want from this site, and we're going to engage a consultant to actually find that out.
Mr. Singh.
Is that the intention of this?
through you, Madam Mayor, should council support this motion, the direction from council would be for us to undertake a functionality audit. What that will mean is, as I said earlier, to understand from the user groups the functions they are performing there, is the building suitable, or how it can be, what improvements are required or modifications are required to make it more functional.
Thank you. I'll go speakers against, speakers for. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, I too am in support of anything that does that obviously supports some of our ageing infrastructure within the town site. In actual fact, Councillor Civic and Councillor Wright actually had this amount of money put onto our budget when we did our Central Ward budgets only a couple of weeks ago. So the money's already sort of been allocated from the ward councillors' point of view. It is interesting to note, I do remember the Wanneroo Sports Club when it was the old country club, when I used to go there, with our Lions Club we used to meet when we had over 40 members. The club itself does have a plan going forward. The president did show me last year what they wanted to do, and as it was indicated before, because of the Bridgeley closing down, they're getting more and more requests for function rooms. And that is what they were asking for, a very large function room in height and size to accommodate the needs of our community. And I was hoping that we'd be able to do that in conjunction with the activity and sports centre that we want to build also along and adjacent to this site. So if this functionality report can obviously do something in that, I somewhat... a functionality audit can be a little bit, I guess I'd just like to understand how that would work but I'll get that from Mr. Singh after, because it's obviously something open-ended. We're not doing an audit on the facilities, we're doing an audit on whether the facilities are correct and existing for the community around. But bearing in mind that this club has been operational, as it says in the report, since '74. It's had some very good presidents that have operated it, and it's had some very bad ones. But it's still there, like all community groups. They pick up their bridges and they continue going on. And they have tried to adapt to the modern sports needs by putting in the five-a-side soccer and all of that sort of stuff further down the hill. It is in a prime location, and it does have good access to the town centre and the surrounding sites. I would like to see the city help fund the function centre that's needed there, and obviously the kitchen upgrades that would need to be done. The committee themselves, or the president, did highlight to me that it would have to probably go on top because they don't want to lose much more of their green areas, although they have had an attack of some beetle that has completely destroyed one of their lawn centres. But I look forward for this coming up, and I do congratulate Councillor Civic for bringing it up at our ward council requests, and we did support that then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Rowe.
Very little to add, Madam Mayor, from what's already been contributed. Just the high usage of the facility. I've been there myself to take a look around, and one of the rooms actually has a great, almost a panorama of different portraits that articulate the history, not just of the place, but of the Wanneroo Town Centre as well. And looking at the date from which this facility has been operational, you can see that it has a really rich history of serving the community. The membership itself, from the conversations I've had with members, it draws from more than just the central ward. It draws from across the whole city, and it also has visiting groups. The afternoon that I was there, the Sorrento Bowls Club, I believe, was competing as well. So it also makes an impression upon visiting groups from different areas who come and see the facility. So I think the building functionality audit is a good first step. I commend the councillors who not just have put forward this motion, but those who have been supporting from the background as well.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Baker.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief. I support the recommendation. there's no harm in having a look at the two issues referred to, the actual building itself proper and its functionality. My only concern that when it comes to a building's functionality or the design of existing design of a building's functionality, or of an existing house, or for that matter, a new home or a new building, it's often in the eyes of the beholder. That's why it would have been preferable to have consulted thoroughly with the executive of the club and also its membership before proceeding. But nonetheless, it's only $50,000 that this will cost us. And the next step, I think, will be, of course, a report back to council. And I hope that during the consultant's investigations that he does consult broadly with the community in particular, at least the executive of the club and the club's members. So, yes, I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Treby, there were questions asked previously. Would you like the right of reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I welcome all of those positive comments. And I think there's probably one, the fifth paragraph on page 428, which would have answered many of those comments. Because, and I'll read, as part of this process, the City will work with the Wanneroo Sports and Social Club for the development of a business plan for the medium to long-term use of the facility. This will enable the City and the Wanneroo Sports and Social Club to provide an overall master plan for the precinct and its future potential use. That within the context of the work that's going to be done by administration. That gives us all a good overall look at what's being proposed. I'm anticipating the next step will be a report back to council. I'm also then anticipating that there probably would be some working group or committee that's set up. I'm anticipating likely to include the ward councillors so as we can work collaboratively with the group. I was quite thankful with the positive comments from Councillor Miles. Unfortunately, I wasn't privy to any of the discussions about what they had in mind, other than they need a business case and a business plan as to how they can best improve the future options and opportunities for the club. Councillors, it's a pretty straight up and down one. Let's have a good look at what we need. Let's have a good look at what they need, and understand, that perspective within context, so as we can make an informed decision at an appropriate point in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Treby. Councillors, if you could please cast your vote. Thank you. Declare that carried unanimously. Moving on to MNOT, Councillor Huntley. And Councillor Huntley, I am happy to second your motion on notice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, this is about kangaroo management here in Wanneroo, and I know you've all have read the report thoroughly. So what I want to do is just to expand on it and give you reasons why this is so important. So there are thousands of kangaroos and land-based fauna that are being impacted by climate change, drought, fires, floods now. And then we add the human element, shooting, roadkill, and urban development. Across the Perth metropolitan area, it is believed that our population will double in the next 20 to 30 years. The largest population will be based here in the city of Wanneroo. Planning legislation provides industrial, commercial, residential, agricultural and rural zones or areas, but doesn't provide any inner city managed conservation wildlife area for displaced wildlife. And strategies for dealing with this displaced fauna is disjointed at the moment and varies across local government authority areas. Although there are some who view relocations as not viable, there have been countless examples of where it has been done right. There has been a 100% success rate to the new relocation sites. The biggest limitation has been around the access to suitable land. For relocations of wildlife displaced for land clearing, there needs to be policy and legislative changes from all levels of government. We have an urgent need with regard to the old Ingham's chicken farm site on Wanneroo Road, whose wildlife is landlocked over the two sites. Currently, the contractor who is to conduct the relocation has to find land, and delays in finding suitable land can hold up development and also put the residential wildlife at risk. It takes time to capture wildlife, and especially kangaroos, and quenders for relocation. Kangaroos can't be moved during their breeding season, as successive relocation reduces significantly during this time. Moving wildlife for relocation is stressful for them. Most macropods will die if moved at particular times during the year. Stress myopathy is a killer in the micropod population and is brought on by noise, stress, being moved too fast, chasing, poor capture techniques, and relocation in the wrong season. This must be a consideration of management and planning prior to the development of land. Offsets are regularly a requirement of developers. However, land selected and approved for offsets is often degraded, lacks food and water, and is therefore of limited benefit to the displaced fauna. Land selected as approved relocation sites under the current guidelines require to be within a limited distance from the initial clearing of land, therefore often relies on the goodwill and generosity of private landowners. However, this makes their land now unsuitable for future use, but land around them can be developed, and so landlocking can reoccur. Once more, many offsets are completely unsuitable to sustain displaced fauna and would need to be revegetated before wildlife can benefit, which again shows a need for wildlife management action plans well before a planning application submission, rather than at the point of development. There is an urgent need for governments to intervene and have a united approach to urban development that are displacing our wildlife. There are 4 strategies which could be implemented very simply, and a need for offsets which could be sourced for relocation of wildlife from the time of initial purchase of land that is to be
Councillor
cleared.
Huntley, 30 seconds remaining, or would you like an extension?
Could I have an extension, Madam
An
Mayor?
extension for 2 minutes?
Thank you.
Okay, happy to move an extension for 2 minutes, seconded by the Councillor Sangali. All in favour? Declare that carried.
Thank you. From the time of initial purchase of land that is to be cleared and made ready for relocation for the wildlife, well before relocation is actually needed. Secondly, a more responsible land allocation by governments is a must to prevent wildlife becoming landlocked within built-up areas. Third, the need for some green corridors. These are also a must for wildlife to travel to and from food and water in the inner cities and developing areas. And finally, the need for fertility control as a means of population reduction is a viable option, and it needs to be introduced immediately into Western Australia to control the landlocked kangaroos and micropod populations trapped in bush forever sites, golf courses, and where smaller numbers of kangaroos can be sustained. And it would be ideal that the public then would still be able to enjoy seeing native wildlife near them, while numbers over the years would enjoy a full cycle of life without a cull to its numbers and decimation to the wildlife communities and mobs. Prior to relocation, fertility control is important because it would ensure less strain on the resident kangaroo population and allow settlement into the new relocation sites, reducing stress in newly relocated animals over a period of time before their breeding season would begin again. There is no form of fertility control in Western Australia. There are 3 types of non-surgical fertility control: an implant, a depot type of injection delivered by a dart, which does avoid capture, and one still available but only on a research licence. They all last between 18 months to 3 years, and fertility control in female kangaroos teamed with castration of selected number of hand-reared male kangaroos is the way forward to an ethical and humane reduction in urban kangaroo populations as more and more land is being developed for housing and other needs. The city of Wanneroo is rapidly expanding and will displace hundreds of hectares of land over the next 20 years. We are well placed to take a lead. Therefore, I hope you will support me in the two recommendations to write to the Environmental Minister and WALGA requesting consideration for urgently needed fertility control and to find suitable relocation sites for wildlife, especially our kangaroo micropod populations affected by forced land clearance and development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. And in seconding your motion on notice, I would like to thank you for a well-researched and an informative motion on notice and for the information that you have just provided to us. As a volunteer wildlife carer myself and also host in my home to orphaned native animals, you see firsthand how it is when they're displaced, and it's heartbreaking, even more so when they are on the side of the road and deceased. And I have to say, Councillor Huntley, that Zoom meetings are not the same without seeing you with one of your kangaroos on your lap on the computer. But I applaud you for bringing this. This is a step forward, which is actually putting some mechanisms in place, triggers in place to support our native animals, and hopefully that we get good responses back from the Minister and also from the Western Australia Local Government Association. And I wholeheartedly support this motion on notice and commend you for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Speakers for. Councillor Baker.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I do wish to support this motion in principle. I can understand where Councillor Huntley is coming from. I'm not sure where much of the content in the report comes from. I'm not sure whether admin prepared the report or not, but I think, well, what we need to do, I think, really is to undertake a kangaroo population study to see what the current figures are regarding kangaroos in our city, of course, given, of course, that in any event, this whole issue is a state responsibility. It's not a city responsibility. We need to conduct that particular study so that we can foresee well in the future what the likely future population will be of kangaroos, of the type referred to in the report, and therefore we can perhaps even conduct genuine birth rate assessments to determine what the future population will be in the event that something's done not to reduce or minimise it. One thing I really just I don't understand why it would be the case, but I think that the comment was made earlier that using male castration would be a fertility control method, but only for hand-reared or reared kangaroos. I'm not sure why they would be singled out, but the thing is, it does. I know it's an awkward thing to talk about, but particularly in terms of fertility control. But the other thing too is using darts that have to be basically darts on kangaroos that will have to be redarted, so to speak, every 18 months. That could be a very expensive process. I understand what the intention is, but and I commend you for bringing this matter to the council, but this is a state responsibility. I'm surprised that they've done nothing at all so far, on ostensibly at least, in respect of fertility control of kangaroos in the Perth metropolitan region area, and that this letter may be the trigger to focus the minister's mind. I'm not saying that the state government is not doing something, but obviously, if they are, we're not aware of it, or it can't be accessed in the public domain. So, yes, thank you for the motion. I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I thank Councillor Huntley for her concerns and passion for our wonderful kangaroos and the well-researched motion on notice. I'm in support of this motion as one of the key points brought up in Councillor Huntley's speech was the chicken farm and the land north of the Civic building. Often residents refer it to as Lot 9000. I have great concerns about the macropods starting to develop due to the urbanisation of Sanagra and the north of the Wanneroo Town Centre, and have had numerous residents contact me about the future of this land. And I'm saddened that the natural bushland will not be retained with only a few public open spaces being left. But I understand the need to get the balance right to help relocate our beautiful wildlife. So a great step forward would be to support this motion. I even think it should go further and request the state government to conduct a report of numbers of kangaroos within the state, but also within the city of Wanneroo, so it gives us a better idea to understand what we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Huntley, for this motion on notice, which I absolutely support. The entire Perth metropolitan region's growing population and its devastating effects on all wildlife must continue to be studied and improved on. I do understand and acknowledge the work being done by the DVCA and developers currently, but question the effectiveness and urgency. Developing a far more robust, coordinated and transparent approach is beyond debate and question. Councillor Huntley, I admire your dedication to this cause and look forward to a better future for all of our beautiful wildlife. As a City of Wanneroo representative on Welga North Zone, I have a ready flag that I will ensure, if adopted tonight, this motion by Councillor Huntley be presented to the next Welga North Zone meeting. Madam Mayor, if Councillor Huntley agrees, could I suggest a minor change? Very minor.
Thank you. Councillor Parker, what's the change?
We have 1 and 2 at the moment. Suggesting leaving the wording as is, just with number 1, where we get to the Perth metropolitan region, stop it there, and then make number 2, request comprehensive advice on suitable relocation sites for all wildlife affected by land clearing. So simply make that 1, 2, and then the third one. So just to ensure clarity and emphasis, that's just a minor. It's up to Councillor
So rather
Huntley.
than having 2, so effectively the same recommendation, but having them split into 3.
Yeah.
So
just
after
having 1, 2 and
metropolitan
3
region,
instead of 1 and 2.
full stop, take away
Yes.
and then 2. Request.
Comprehensive advice on suitable relocation sites for all wildlife affected by land clearing.
Yep. Okay, and then number 2 becomes number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Huntley, you happy with that?
Yeah, that's, I'm very happy with that, Madam Mayor. Yep.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Civic.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This Ingham site has been around from way back in the 1960s, since it was the golden poultry, and the kangaroos have lived there in harmony and in sync with the poultry farm and the chicken hatchery over the years. And of course, the community of Wanneroo Townside have not been happy with the odours that were there. Finally, we've got to this point where it's been sold, it's going to be subdivided. I totally agree with Councillor Huntley on relocation and proper procedures to make sure that the kangaroos do survive. And ultimately, it will be hopefully a state government and also the developers' role to ensure that happens, but certainly to make everyone aware that this is a problem. I'm more than happy to support this motion on notice and have it referred to Welga North Metro Zone, as Councillor Parker has said, and then on to the state government. So I certainly endorse the motion on notice. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. And the Chief Executive Office and I have just read through the change. If we just put a full stop about metropolitan region, then to request comprehensive, it doesn't actually link it through to the Minister. So just to tidy it up even more, it will be 1, request the Mayor to write to the Minister for Environment, A, requesting consideration of fertility control on kangaroos and smaller macropod populations as a potential solution to the native wildlife population challenge in the Perth metropolitan region, and B, requesting comprehensive advice. So that links it directly up to the Minister. So are you happy with that, Councillor Huntley?
Yeah, I'm very happy with that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Aitken?
Thank you. I'm happy to support this as a letter to the Minister for Environment, but if there should be any further funds required to deal with the kangaroos or further forward with this, I would like any of that brought back to Council, because we need to be mindful that this would be unbudgeted expenditure, and I'd like to plan that budgeting a lot better. The letter I'm happy with, but any cost to council, any cost to the City of Wanneroo needs to come back to council to be evaluated at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. I think Mr Sear, that would happen as a matter of process.
Yeah, I think through you, Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Aiken is alluding to any actions that might arise as a result of kangaroo management would be subject to a budget consideration.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? No need for right of reply, Councillor Huntley.
I would like to make a right of reply in conjunction with Councillor Baker's question about, about male kangaroos. The reason why we would use the hand-reared kangaroos is that they will need to be handled, and post-surgery they'll actually need to be cared for. So to do that with a wild kangaroo, unfortunately, would cause stress, and chances are that kangaroo would pass away. So you cannot do it to wild kangaroos. That would be just unbearable for them. But certainly for hand-reared kangaroos, yep, no worries.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Huntley. Councillors, if I could please ask you to cast your vote. I've not got my screen on. What's yours? Yep, carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to MN03, Councillor Wright. And you have a seconder?
Yes, Councillor Miles.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. For my first motion on notice tonight, I'm focusing my attention on the Wanneroo BMX Club. This fantastic club is the largest in Western Australia, producing quality bike riders from all walks of life and representing both Wanneroo and the state at competitions. Unfortunately, tonight my motion on notice isn't about the future of the club as much as I would like it to be, but keep your eyes peeled as there may be one in the future. This provides a good segue into the crux of this motion. The reason for amending the terms of reference and name group is to allow the club elected members and administration to have a broader conversation around the club's future as to whether they should stay or leave their home in Pearsall, and allows for the potential upgrades in the short term to make sure that facilities are fit for purpose and meeting basic health and safety standards. Due to the change in council members and club representatives, the mood of the group has changed and all parties wish to have a broader discussion around the club's future. A number of amendments involve changing the name of the group, removing Raceway, as this was considered as a pass option some time ago, removing the word relocation to provide openness to have a broader discussion. The new name shows that both city and club can work together on similarities without any limitations. On page 436, the purpose has been expanded to include current and potential site works to provide a short to medium-term vision for the club, which simply cannot survive in its current state with holes in the roof, toilets that are unusable and a deteriorating registration building. I wish to thank the Wanneroo BMX Club for their patience and fierce advocacy, and hopefully with this motion on notice pass, it will allow for the working group to have a serious discussion on the broader options for the club, not just relocation. Councillors, I ask for your support as this club has the potential to be big and is crying out for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Wright has articulated very well the mood of the last meeting, which, Mayor, you was at and contributed to some of this discussion that brought about the changes needed for this working group, well, now to be called a working group. The main one for me is under the aims and functions to add 1.3 to progress and allow for the potential upgrades to the current facilities or to the facilities of the track in the short, medium until 1.2 is met. So we're still going to be working towards finding a suitable, proper location for them. Some of the locations that have been brought forward over the last 22 years are either too small or too remote. And with the future East Wanneroo starting to come along quite fast, I think administration will probably be able to find a spot within the next 5 to 10 years quite easily. We will be obviously looking at giving the club a slightly longer lease to accommodate this use, and then obviously deal with the relocation at that point. So please, councillors, if you could support the terms of reference change going forward, so we can actually make some meaningful changes to the current location.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the role and purpose, and after seeing what's just happened with the fact that there was no allocation of grant funding for the lights for this BMX track, I do wonder whether there would have been an undertone discussion about the fact of if lights were provided or a grant was provided, how long would the BMX continue for? So longevity, I think, has to come into these. If we're going to change the terms of reference, maybe we should look at the longevity of the club and actually allow that 10-year period to be in here, rather than just say we're going to look for relocation sites, look for we're not actually saying, look, it's 10 years, so if you pay for lights or if a grant funding occurs, at least it's going to be 10 years before they're going to be asking again. I think it's really important. This club is quite degraded and needs a lot of work if it's going to stay where it is for the next 10 years. And I think we're biasing the privilege of grant funding if we don't add longevity into this. So I'm not sure what you all think about that, but I do think we should perhaps change the words when we look at the role and purpose to progress with the current and potential future site works in the short to medium term, and with regard to relocate and growing the BMX club within the next 10 years. So, rather than not have a 10-year period put in there, I think we need to show how long this longevity is. So that's my...
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Mr CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My understanding from discussions I had with Councillor Wright is I think the intention of the short to medium is that 0 to 10 years, and the long term is beyond 10, which I guess aligns to our long-term financial plan of 20 years. So Councillor Wright may wish to clarify, but my understanding is it is aligned with Councillor Huntley's view that short to medium is sort of the 10-year time frame.
Yes, that's correct. It was more just not locking in a period that may not work with what the committee and working group is trying to establish, and actually gives the freedom for both club, council and administration to work with different time frames as new issues come up, and as well it's only been our first committee meeting, so it actually allows us to have a broader discussion for our next meeting to be able to work out specific time frames and actually allow us to have that broader discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Civic.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I certainly endorse this motion on notice. I've apologise for not being at this meeting as a member of a group, but I had a Walga State Council meeting on that evening and am disappointed that I missed the meeting. But look, the terms of reference, I'm happy to endorse at this point in time. I'm a great believer of the BMX club, and I'm really happy that Jordan's brought this, Councillor Wright has brought this motion on notice forward. The longevity of the club is important in my way of thinking, and I'm sure in Council's way of thinking. They do need major surgery done to that site. But the point I want to make is that we've been looking at the relocation of the BMX club for many, many years. It still hasn't happened for one reason or another. But I think to keep them there at this point in time is important, to make sure that they have the facilities, the car park and the upgraded water and toilets, etc., is important in the short term. This particular site is a very, very important site to the City of Wanneroo as well. But as a firm believer of keeping the club there, they serve a great purpose for the young community in BMX. And I certainly am happy to endorse the motion on notice, and hope we can get to relocating them at some time in the future. If it's after 10 years, so be it. But we've got to keep working on that so they can have actually new facilities and probably Olympic-type facilities as well. So, yes, I support the motion on notice. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillors, I'm going to also be on the... Sorry? Oh, sorry, Councillor... I'll defer to Councillor Rowe first. Thank you. Councillor Rowe?
Sorry, Madam Mayor. Over on the far side now. I'll be brief on this one. I just wanted to first and foremost commend Councillor Wright for putting forward this motion on notice. I attended that first working group meeting as an observer, so it wasn't in a voting capacity, but it did give me the opportunity to see the level of detail and diligence that is being brought to the table by the committee members, particularly from the BMX. I do recognise administration's comment and the wariness on page 439, particularly to the reference about raising expectations. But my view on that is because the senior most members of the committee are on that working group, they are fully aware of the discussions that are ongoing. And I know that they also have a working relationship with members of the property services team as well. So I think they're fully aware of the longer term context. This just amends the terms of reference in the short term and demonstrates a commitment to that club and its members.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Speakers against? Speakers for? I fully support Councillor Wright in this motion on notice. It's been quite a journey for the Wanneroo BMX Raceway and their ongoing committee, and I applaud their patience. And we really need to get support for them continuing on. And this is a good way forward, Councillor Wright. You've done your research. We were all around the table with club members, and their frustration is really showing through, especially when we know that they are a large growing group and one of the go-to places for many others in the metropolitan area, well outside the city of Wanneroo borders. So it would be great to give them, I think this would give them that assurance that we're on side with them, we're supporting with them, and that we're right behind them. So happy to support this motion on notice. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Wright, was there any, no, you don't really have to reply through any questions or any debate?
I appreciate everyone's views and points, and I hope this will get through. Thank you.
Thank you. So councillors, MN03, can you please cast your vote? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. MN04, Councillor Wright. And do you have a seconder?
Yes, Councillor Civic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It has been my pleasure to present this motion on notice to Council tonight, which has come straight from the PSL community. This item I take very seriously when it comes to road safety for both residents and users of the street. I have introduced this to Council due to the number of concerns, complaints and inquiries I've received since being elected to Council, and also was one of the very first issues I received as a candidate. Kemp Street is one of the longest roads connecting Pearsall from Archer Street to Lenore Road. It is a straight residential road with no obstacles to deter speeding. Kemp Street is significant as it homes many seniors and young families with children, and is a major route to the busy Pearsall shopping centre, and is home to a public transport bus route frequently used by students. This excessive speeding has caused anxiety for its residents and creates dangerous conditions for people to back out of their driveways and pedestrians to cross the road. Valuing the community feedback, I took it upon myself to conduct a survey of the residents on Kemp Street through door knocking and letter dropping to the 93 homes. Out of those letter drops, I received 54 submissions from residents on Kemp Street and 2 additional requests from other Pearsall residents who wanted to also make submissions. A total of 56 submissions were made within a 2-month time frame. The survey result indicated a 90% support towards a traffic calming device of some sort, with residential preferences being a roundabout or speed bumps. I would also like to thank the local member Margaret Quirk for also getting in contact with the city late last year to support action on this important issue facing Pearsall residents, and also Mr Singh and his team for taking the time to work with me on drafting this very community-based motion on notice. I'm asking my fellow councillors to support this motion on notice to recognise that this is a serious issue faced by the Pearsall community, and that as a council we need to take action to help build safer communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Civic.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Wright for bringing this motion on notice up. This has been an issue in Kemp Street for quite some time, and it seems to be getting worse, and he's gone out and taken the trouble to go and canvass the residents, and these are the results that he's got are quite outstanding. Look, from mine, I'm really happy to support this motion that administration have a good look at this and try and stop this hooning. But hooning, of course, is a policing matter. And also, Councillor Wright did point out that in some of the other streets in Pearsall, Pearsall mainly and Hocking, that there have been hooning incidents. So in terms of calming devices, etc., it's going to be looked at by the assets team to see what we can do here to stop this sort of thing. But certainly I'm more worried that the hoons are coming from internal rather than external, and it would be nice to stop these people in some way, and if it means calming devices, so be it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Speakers for? Councillor Rowe.
Thanks, Mayor. Once again, just to commend this motion on notice, I think it shows a really good level of community consultation. I know that traffic assessment's already been conducted for part of Kemp Street, Pearsall, but going out and really doing our due diligence and making sure that the data is accurate, as we do know that it can change over time. It's not just necessarily a static thing. Reiterating what Councillor Wright's already said, the close proximity of the homes on Kemp Street to elderly people who use the Pearsall Community Centre, particularly the Nitinata group, Pearsall Primary, which has a lot of child pedestrian access, and also the shopping centre. So given all of those things, I know that hooning and enforcement of hooning is a state government responsibility, but if we can make sure that our data is accurate for the entirety of the street, then at least means we can come back to residents and say that a complete traffic assessment was conducted.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? I'd just like to, I would like to support this motion on notice, and as I've spoken with Councillor Wright, my office has also been receiving communication from concerned local residents, and I think this will go a long way in reassuring them that we're taking a step to support them and help them in relation to the traffic management and the way forward. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Speakers against? Speakers for? Putting the motion on notice, if you could please cast your votes. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10, urgent business. Mrs. Smart.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In accordance with Clause 3.15 of the City of Wanneroo Standing Orders Local Law, the presiding person may dispense with the requirement to give notice under Clause 3.14 where the presiding person is satisfied that A, the motion is a matter of urgency and the motion could not reasonably be dealt with at the next ordinary meeting of the Council, and B, it was not reasonable for the notice to be given. Madam Mayor, as the presiding person, you have determined that this matter has satisfied the requirements of Clause 3.15 of the local law as stated.
Thank you, Mrs. Smart. And furthermore, as the recommendation purpose is to seek Council's approval to list this report at our next Council meeting in April, I will treat this motion as a procedural motion. Therefore, I will ask the mover, Councillor Baker, to briefly introduce the motion, and then we will go straight to the vote. And Councillor Baker, in moving, I'm happy to second this for you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'll be very brief. It's interesting, you know, you file an application on day one, or you receive an application on day one. It takes several months for it to be assessed, and in the meantime, information comes from left field, very important information. Yes, there are several aspects of the Woolworths DA which are in the process of being further examined, and one relates to the King Neptune statue, of course, and the current status of its heritage listing, which apparently has been in the queue for an assessment since 2002, I think it is. But in a nutshell, yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. This matter can be adjourned until April. The fact-finding process is continuing, and this is a very important decision that the City will address in due course, as the JDAP will. And yes, we will collate further information. We'll admin through Mark will collate further information as this is forthcoming and update all council members as to the current status of the heritage matter. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. So, councillors, the urgent business has been moved, Councillor Baker, seconded by myself, and you have the recommendation in front of you. If I could please ask you to cast your votes. I think we need two haven't voted yet. Okay. So I declare that carried. So Councillor Civic, you wish to declare an interest?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I should have done it prior to Councillor Baker speaking, but I'd like to make a declaration of impartiality on the statement. And really, I'll read it out. With regard to item UB01-03/22, I disclose that I am a Joint Development Assessment Panel member, and as a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly. Madam Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. And the Chief Executive Officer has just advised me that the other person on JDAP is Councillor Nguyen. So, Councillor Nguyen, you wish to declare an interest?
Yes, Mayor. Just for the same reasons, Councillor Civic has advised that as a member of JDAP, I wish to declare that there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and will vote accordingly.
Thank you. So you abstained on the last. So what we'll do, Councillor Nguyen, you just said you'll vote accordingly. So I'm going to actually ask if you could clear the vote and we'll vote again. Thank you. Okay. So councillors, if you could please cast your vote.
Madam Mayor, is it possible to abstain if you've made that declaration, or I must vote?
Mr.
Must
CEO.
Vote? Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'm mindful that Councillor Vidnani declared an impartiality interest, so he would be entitled to vote.
Happy to do so. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Nguyen, are you casting your vote? Okay. Thank you, councillors. I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 11, confidential items. There are none. Date of the next council briefing session will be held on Tuesday, the 5th of April at 6 p.m. and I declare the meeting closed at 9:20 p.m. Thank you.